Chapter 2670. Half a month later, Lin Sun had completely sorted out the injuries on his body. Although he hadn't really recovered and healed, he could already move freely. In addition to cultivation, he would also give Xia Ji the magic medicine every day. Although the effect was not great, it was the only thing he could do at the moment. Xia Ji was different from other cultivators in the world. Her injuries needed to be repaired and healed by herself. This had something to do with the fate shackles sealed in her body. Even Lin Sun could do nothing about it. But fortunately, in Cloud Shadow Village, there were no worldly disputes, so Lin Sun could spend more time and energy on cultivation and taking care of Xia Ji. Brother Dao Yuan. Xiaoxi came again. The little girl would deliver the medicine on time every day. Lin Sun actually didn't care about the medicine, but he enjoyed her kindness very much. After drinking the medicine, Lin Sun smiled and said, "Xiaoxi, come, let me see if you have made any progress in cultivation recently." Xiaoxi's big eyes lit up, and she said yes. Outside the stone house, it was a spacious courtyard with old trees and luxuriant flowers and trees. Not far away was a large river that meandered around Cloud Shadow Village like a jade belt. Cloud Shadow Village could be considered as a small tribe. There were more than 1,000 residents who had lived here for generations. In the past, they made a living by hunting and gathering herbs. The men and women in the village, old and young, started cultivating at a young age. The cultivation methods they practiced were also passed down from a long time ago. During this period of time, Lin Sun had learned a lot of news. For example, the vast mountains where Cloud Shadow Village was located had been called Fallen God Ridge since ancient times. The land covered by the mountain range was hundreds of thousands of miles long. The city closest to Cloud Shadow Village was called Green Willow City. It was said that the city was built by the body of a green willow tree that had gained intelligence and reached the immortal realm. As for Azure Willow City, it was one of the 360 cities located within the territory of the Watercloud Province. The Watercloud Province was one of the innumerable provinces of the Donglai region. Donglai region, Xixia region, North Wind region, and South Fire region together formed the vast territory of the first heaven of the eternal world. In other words, the current Lin Sun had indeed reached eternal true world. It's just that the Cloud Shadow Village has been living in the depths of the Fallen God Ridge for generations. Their understanding of the first heaven is extremely limited. Most of the information they know is from word of mouth. So Lin Sun couldn't get more specific information. But no matter what, being able to reach eternal true world alive was already good news for Lin Sun. Buzz. In the courtyard, a wave of spiritual energy fluctuated as little Xi's petite figure radiated with a powerful aura. She started to execute a fist technique. As she opened and closed her moves, they were swift and fierce, and the strong winds were piercingly cold, causing the air to emit buzzing sounds. Lin Sun stood aside and watched quietly. Xiaoxi was only 12 years old, but she already had the cultivation of the great perfection of the reincarnation evolution realm. Furthermore, her Dao foundation was tempered to be extremely solid and robust. At such a young age, he already had such a profound cultivation. If he was placed in the ancient path of stars, he would definitely be regarded as an outstanding talent. However, according to Xiaoxi, there were many peers who were more powerful than her in the entire Cloud Shadow Village. Lin Sun was secretly surprised by this. After some observation, he vaguely understood what was going on. The core of it was that although Cloud Shadow Village was just a remote village deep in the mountains, it was located in the first heaven after all, and its innate conditions were too good. The spiritual energy that pervaded the world was rich, and the mountain treasures and spiritual herbs contained in the mountains were far from what other worlds could compare with. Moreover, the aura of the Great Way here was solid and robust. It was filled with a magical aura of perfection and eternity, which was of incredible help to cultivation. When the living beings in this world were born, it was already destined that the starting point of their path of cultivation would be much, much higher than that of the living beings in other worlds. This was the eternal true world. In the eyes of the cultivators in the countless starry dimensions of the vast thousand worlds, This place was like the legendary eternal kingdom, the world of gods. It was the supreme holy land in the eyes of all cultivators. Even if an ordinary person was here, they would be able to prolong their lives and obtain a lifespan that far surpassed that of an ordinary person. Similarly, due to the different laws of the world, if the vast thousand worlds were simple stone houses, then the eternal true world would be a castle made of divine gold. In the vast thousand worlds, once a battle between emperors broke out, it could easily destroy the world and bring about unimaginable disasters. But in the eternal true world, due to the incredibly sturdy power of the laws of the world, a battle between emperors could at most destroy mountains and cut a river. Those who could truly destroy the world and pluck the stars and the moon were existences at the immortal realm. Just like at that moment, little she had the cultivation of the great completion of the reincarnation evolution realm. But the force of her punch could only cause the air to tremble and the air to explode. If this was on the ancient path of stars, a reincarnation evolution realm cultivator would be able to split mountains and split rivers. After a while, little she stopped punching and stood still. A layer of crystalline sweat had already appeared on her face, and she immediately asked, "Brother Dao Yuan, what do you think?" Lin Sun praised, "Not bad. In less than a month, you can definitely try to break through to the king realm. However, you need to adjust the fist technique you're practicing. The fierce and fierce Dao is not suitable for you." As he spoke, Lin Sun took out a piece of jade slip and inserted his divine sense into it. He recorded some of his pointers on it, and then handed it to little Shi, saying, "Take it back and have a good look. Maybe it can help you." Little Shi took the jade slip and said happily, "Thank you, Brother Dao Yuan." Lin Sun smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. These days, little Shi came to deliver medicine every day, and Lin Sun also wanted to repay her kindness. Recently, he gave little Shi some pointers on cultivation. "Little Shi, go back and cultivate first." In the distance, Wu Chuan, the village head, came over and told her with a smile. Little Shi replied with a hum, and her petite figure flew into the distance like a butterfly. "Little friend, how is your recovery?" Wu Chuan asked. Lin Sun said, "My injury has recovered a little, and it doesn't affect my walking anymore." Wu Chuan revealed a happy expression and said with relief, "That's for the best. My young friend, you should be more attentive to Lady Xia Ji. Ever since she entered the Cloud Shadow Village, I noticed that her injuries were extremely serious, but she still forced herself to stay by your side. I've repeatedly advised her to rest well, but she didn't listen. I can see that you are the one she cares about the most." Lin Sun took a deep breath and nodded seriously. "I will," Wu Chuan said with a smile. "I know that a person like you must not be an ordinary person, and even your attainments and cultivation are far stronger than I imagined. You and Xia Ji will definitely leave here sooner or later, but before that, can you promise me one thing?" Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Senior, please say it." Wu Chuan seemed to be a little hesitant. After a moment of silence, he said, 3 years later, there will be a selection battle in Green Willow City. At that time, any young people who are under the age of 18 and have the cultivation of longevity can participate in it. If they can stand out, they can be sent to the Yinyang Learning in Donglai region to cultivate. Little Shi's parents died a long time ago, and she grew up with me. This child is just 12 years old this year. Within 3 years, she will definitely step into the longevity realm." Lin Sun vaguely understood and said, "Senior, do you want me to help little Shi enter the Yinyang Learning?" Wu Chuan shook his head quickly. "That's not necessary. I just want to ask you to take little Shi with you when you leave and send her to Green Willow City so that she can participate in the selection battle." Lin Sun said with a smile, "Senior, don't worry. I will definitely help little Shi." Wu Chuan seemed to heave a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but say in a self-deprecating manner, "Our Cloud Shadow Village has lived in the deep mountains and forests for generations. Most of us don't have much experience and have never even taken half a step out of Fallen God Ridge. Most of us know nothing about the outside world. I'm not afraid of little friend laughing at me, but I've lived for hundreds of years and have only been to Green Willow City once. That place is truly bustling." At the end of his words, There is a look of longing in his eyes. I am old and have nothing to ask for, but I don't want little she to be trapped in this mountain for the rest of her life. She is still young and has a long way to go in the future. How could she not go out and gain experience? Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. Although Wu Chuan was little Shi's grandfather, his care and expectation for little Shi were no less than that of his parents. Wu Chuan left soon after. Lin Sun returned to the room and came to the bed. Looking at Xia Ji, who had not woken up, he couldn't help but clench his hands quietly. He would never forget the cyan bone saber, black rui, golden seal, and silver hairpin that suddenly appeared in the strange starry sky. At this moment, Lin Sun could probably conclude that the owners of these treasures must be from the same force, and this force had the power to control and drive the alien beasts in the starry sky. He would never forget the 10 undying factions that had attacked Fourth Brother and himself. Wang family, Fu family, Qi family, Zhongli family, Mu family. No matter who you are, this hatred must be paid with blood. Lin Sun's black eyes were full of cold and firm killing intent. There is no 60-year cycle in the mountains. One does not know the year. 2 years had passed in a hurry. Cloud Shadow Village seemed to be isolated from the world. There were no disturbances, which made Lin Sun's life quiet and substantial. In addition to cultivation, he took care of Xia Ji. Occasionally, he would go into the deep mountains with the villagers to hunt and collect herbs. As time went by, most of the villagers were familiar with the existence of Lin Sun and Xia Ji and regarded them as their own people. This kind of quiet and simple life was a rare opportunity for Lin Sun, who'd experienced the tempering of worldly affairs. It allowed him to calm down and ponder over his future path, review his past experiences, and make up for his own shortcomings. To Lin Sun's relief, although Xia Ji still hadn't woken up after 2 years, the cracks on her body like cobwebs had quietly healed. This undoubtedly proved that Xia Ji's serious injury was getting better little by little. Chapter 2671. The morning sun poured down, and the sky was clear. In the distant mountains, in a spacious and tidy courtyard, a group of young boys and girls sat cross-legged and meditated, inhaling and exhaling the essence of heaven and earth. The older ones were 17 or 18 years old, and the younger ones were still children in open crotch pants. At this hour, the experienced villagers had already entered the mountain, either to hunt or to collect spiritual herbs. Lin Sun sat in a bamboo rattan rocking chair in the courtyard, his eyes slightly narrowed, and his manner was leisurely and comfortable. The morning wind blew, with the fresh smell of grass and trees, and the soft morning light was not dazzling, but very comfortable. It had been 2 years. He had become the trusted teacher of the villagers. The courtyard in front of him was the school, and the young boys and girls in the village were the students. What Lin Sun had to do was to guide these students in cultivation. At first, the villagers were worried, because in their eyes, Lin Sun was too young, and his cultivation had not been restored, almost like a waste. But as Shi's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, and in less than 3 months, she was far ahead of her peers, the villagers finally realized that Lin Sun, the young man who often gave advice to Shi, even if he looked very weak, had amazing attainments in cultivation. So much so that they came to Lin Sun with all kinds of mountain goods and wine, and let their children follow Lin Sun to cultivate. Lin Sun naturally could not refuse. When guiding these young boys and girls in cultivation, he taught them according to their aptitude and solved their doubts. He even taught them different Tao and methods according to each person's nature and root bone. In fact, with his current cultivation, the complete inheritance of the immortal Tao that belonged to the last era, and the various techniques he'd obtained all along the way until now, he'd mastered a single technique since a long time ago. So not to mention teaching these children, even guiding Emperor Realm figures in their cultivation was absolutely not a problem. What's more, he was the first Tao ancestor since ancient times. The progress of these young boys and girls was very obvious, even beyond the expectations of many villagers, which made them overjoyed. When they treated Lin Sun, they all respected and kindly from the bottom of their hearts, and regarded him as one of their own. Wu Chuan was extremely gratified by this, and he frequently sighed with emotion. When these young people grow up in the future, their accomplishments in the path of the Grand Tao will surely surpass their seniors, and they'll go even further. Shit! Village chief and the others have been trapped near the fallen god pool by a great demon. Suddenly, a panicked and anxious shout resounded out from afar, and it broke the tranquil atmosphere. Fallen God Pond. The young men and women who were meditating in the courtyard became restless. Don't get distracted. Continue cultivating. I'll go take a look. In the rocking chair, Lin Sun stood up. His indifferent voice resounded through the field, as if it had the power to reach people's hearts, making those boys and girls calm down. Little Shi, take care of this place for me. Lin Sun looked at little Shi, and 2 years had already allowed Shi to grow into a graceful young girl. Her figure was graceful, beautiful, and lively. She was no longer ignorant and childish like before. Whoosh! The next moment, Lin Sun disappeared into thin air. Fallen God Pond has been a place of great danger since ancient times. How could the village chief and others be trapped there? It's too dangerous. As soon as Lin Sun left, the young men and girls in the courtyard began to talk about it. Many people were worried. Do you think Master Lin can do it? Someone couldn't help asking. Master Lin. This was the respectful title for Lin Sun by these young men and girls in the village. I heard from my father that although Master Lin has mastered all kinds of magical inheritance and has unimaginable wisdom, his injury is too serious. He has been in our village for 2 years, but he hasn't fully recovered yet. Someone whispered. It said that when the village chief and others talked about Master Lin, they all felt sorry for him. They thought that the injury he suffered was very likely to hurt his Taoist root, and it would be difficult for him to recover in this life. So, even Master Lin can't do it? Who knows? In the past 2 years, no one has ever seen Master Lin fight. What's more, he is injured now. Even if he used to be very powerful, now, alas. Although these young boys and girls respected and admired Lin Sun to the extreme and regarded him as their teacher, they all knew that Lin Sun was injured. In the past 2 years, they had never seen Lin Sun fight, and this caused them to lack confidence in Lin Sun's mission this time. Why don't we go together? There's strength in numbers. Anyway, we can help, someone suggested. Nonsense. She stared with her big watery eyes and shouted. Before Master Lin left, he asked us to concentrate on cultivation. If anyone dares to think about it, I will take action. Everyone immediately shut up. 2 years had passed. At present, she was the leader of these young men and girls. She was invincible among her peers and had a lot of prestige. Since Brother Daoyuan has decided to take action, he must be able to save Grandpa and others safely. She murmured in her heart. When there was no one else, she still liked to call Lin Sun Brother Daoyuan. Fallen God Pond. It was surrounded by blood-colored mist all year round. Since ancient times, it had been regarded as a great forbidden place. A long time ago, a big shot from Green Willow City came to visit, but after entering the blood-colored Fallen God Pond, he never returned and never appeared again. This matter even caused a sensation in Green Willow City, attracting countless cultivators to come to explore, but no one dared to get involved. At this time, the village head Wu Chuan and 7 or 8 villagers were trapped in the blood-colored mist. They had difficulty breathing, and their cultivation was suppressed by a strange force. They couldn't even move a finger. It's over, someone said bitterly. Previously, they were going to hunt a demonic beast, but who would have thought that they would be lured by this demonic beast and rush to the area where the fallen God Pond was located? When they just wanted to return, it was too late. It wasn't that they were careless, and it was instead because even though that demon beast cultivation was only comparable to the quasi-emperor realm, it possessed the ability to bewitch the hearts of others. This was the reason why their minds were silently deceived, and they were led here in a daze. Village head, what should we do? Someone asked, looking at Wu Chuan. Wu Chuan's resolute face was also covered with a haze. After a long silence, he said in a low voice, "What else can we do? We can only resign ourselves to fate." His voice was filled with uncontrollable despair. The others couldn't help but feel sorrow in their hearts. Chi! Suddenly, a black figure swept out from the thick blood-colored mist, transforming into a ferocious beast that looked like a lion or tiger, but was covered in jet-black scales, had green eyes, and a blood-colored horn on its head. Wu Chuan and the others were terrified, immediately recognizing that this was the ferocious beast they had been chasing. Black Dream Taper. Buzz, as soon as the Black Dream Taper appeared, circles of strange black light appeared on its fur, covering the bodies of Wu Chuan and the others. Instantly, Wu Chuan and the others' eyes became dull, and their consciousness became muddled. The Black Dream Taper's green eyes glowed with a strange light, and it let out a low and cryptic incantation. Walk forward for 1,000 feet, and you will reach the Fallen God Pond. In the deepest part of the pond, there is a divine herb that absorbs the power of order. If any of you can help me extract it, I will let you go. Go! The Black Dream Taper raised its claw and waved it lightly. The surrounding blood-colored mist instantly opened up a path. Wu Chuan and the others, whose minds and souls were being controlled, were like puppets walking forward along the path. The Black Dream Taper followed closely behind. Not long after, a black pond with an area of 100 feet appeared in their field of vision. Around the pond, there were piles of bones that had decayed a long time ago. Some were in human form, while others belonged to other races. It was hard to tell how long they had been dead, and it was chilling to see. Above the pond, there were strands of blood-colored mist that looked like divine chains of order lingering there. It was strange and terrifying. The Fallen God Pond, an unknown place of great danger. The Black Dream Taper stood far away, chanting in a low voice, "Use your cultivation base and jump into the pond one by one. Remember, don't touch the blood-colored mist." Wu Chuan and the others didn't notice the danger at all, and they walked closer step by step. Swoosh! However, at this moment, a tall figure suddenly appeared out of thin air, blocking in front of Wu Chuan and the others. It was Lin Sun. "Village chief, let me bring you back." His figure was tall and straight, and he spoke with a smile. It was an ordinary and casual sentence, but when it fell into the ears of Wu Chuan and the others, it was like the sound of the great Tao. It was grand, sacred, and deafening. Boom! Wu Chuan and the others felt as if their souls were struck by lightning. Their minds and souls that were controlled seemed to have broken the shackles, and they immediately woke up from that muddle-headed state. Lin Daoyuan. They were first stunned when they saw Lin Sun, and then they came to an understanding, causing their expressions to change while coldness arose in their hearts. They realized that if it wasn't for Lin Sun's appearance, then it was very likely that they would have unknowingly entered the ferocious and unfathomable Fallen God Pond. Why aren't you affected by the power of the curse here? In the distance, the Black Dream Taper's pair of green eyes locked onto Lin Sun, who had suddenly appeared. It was shocked and angry. "My young friend, be careful of this demonic beast. It has the secret skill of soul and is best at bewitching people. It can make people fall into a dream unconsciously, and their lives will be under its control." Wu Chuan warned quickly, and his face was full of fear. "Village chief, don't worry. It's just an evil beast. It can't cause any trouble." Lin Sun smiled gently. His words were casual, but the contempt in his tone surprised Wu Chuan and the others. In the past 2 years, in their impression, Lin Sun had always been a humble and peaceful person. It was the first time they saw such a strong and disdainful side of Lin Sun. In the distance, the Black Dream Taper let out an obscure roar. Its fur was flowing with black light, and like circles of ripples, it shrouded Lin Sun. Overconfident, Lin Sun's eyes were full of sarcasm as he said these words. Boom! The circles of black light suddenly exploded, as if they were swept away by a hurricane. Then, the Black Dream Taper let out a shrill and painful cry. Its eyes were broken, and blood spurted out from its lips and ears. Its whole body collapsed on the ground, twitching violently, and its wails resounded through the world. Lin Sun stretched out his hand, and the black dream taper's huge body suddenly shrunk to the size of a palm and fell into Lin Sun's palm. Wu Chuan and the others were stunned. P.S. Today's update, tomorrow's update. Chapter 2672. Little friend, have you recovered your cultivation? Wu Chuan couldn't help but ask in shock. Lin Sun shook his head. Not yet. I've only recovered half of my strength. Half of his strength. Wu Chuan and the others looked at each other in confusion. He could play the black dream taper in the palm of his hand without recovering his strength. How powerful would he be if he recovered his full strength? Senior, please spare my life. I'm willing to submit to you. I only ask that you show mercy and spare my life. In Lin Sun's palm, the black dream taper, whose body had shrunk several times, was begging for mercy. It was trembling and was even more obedient than a rabbit. This place is shrouded in bloody mist. There are fragmented and mixed order energies. How can you come and go as you please? Lin Sun asked. This was the reason why he didn't kill the black dream taper immediately. Many years ago, I happened to find a bone ring near the fallen god pond. When I wore it, I was no longer afraid of the curse around the fallen god pond. The black dream taper was very honest. As he spoke, he opened his mouth and spat out a bone ring. This object seemed to be polished from the bones of some sort of beast, and its texture was rough and unadorned. However, it was extremely heavy when held in one's hand. Lin Sun could tell that there was order energies surging in the bone ring. It was obviously from the same source as the order energies in the bloody mist. Is there really a divine herb that absorbs order energies in the fallen god pond? Lin Sun put away the bone ring and asked casually. The Black Dream AO said, This lowly one is not too sure. However, ever since I obtained this bone ring, this lowly one would often dream. In this dream, in the depths of the fallen god pond, there was a stalk of divine grass swaying in the water, and every leaf was surrounded by strange and indescribable Tao patterns of laws. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, Why don't you go in and check it out yourself? The Black Dream Taper said embarrassedly, I did try once, but I almost died. You lured us here because you're afraid of death? A villager scolded angrily. The Black Dream Taper felt wronged. If you didn't want to kill me, why would you be lured here? Wu Chuan and the others were speechless. So you're saying that if I kill you, I'll let you die unjustly? Lin Sun showed a faint smile. The Black Dream Taper hurriedly shook his head and said in a sorrowful voice, Senior, you are here to save someone. You have a different standpoint. Even if you kill me, it is within reason. However, I hope that Senior will give me a chance to live since I am willing to repent. Light flowed between Lin Sun's palms and fingers, turning into a seal of restriction. The seal suddenly plunged into the Black Dream Taper's body. The latter let out a painful howl, and its body trembled violently for a while before it calmed down. Thank you, Senior, for not killing me, the Black Dream Taper said respectfully. In the future, you will stay in Cloud Shadow Village and be the guardian beast. Within 1,000 years, the restrictive power that I left in your body will be dissolved. Lin Sun said, However, if you have second thoughts during this period, you will die immediately. Do you understand? The Black Dream Taper nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. It was only 1,000 years. It could afford to wait. Chief, is this arrangement feasible? Lin Sun asked. Wu Chuan laughed heartily and said, It couldn't be better. Then let's do it. However, before we leave this place, I have to trouble you. As Lin Sun said, he waved his sleeve and kept Wu Chuan, the others, and the Black Dream Taper. Then he looked at the fallen god pond on one side, and a terrifying light appeared in his deep eyes. After a while, buzz. Following Lin Sun's thought, the abyssal sword cauldron whizzed out, scattering hundreds of millions of light rays towards the fallen god pond. The black water in the pool tumbled violently. Strange and horrifying blood-colored order energy emerged from the waves like dense scarlet lightning bolts. Lin Sun was shocked. No wonder no one could leave this place alive since ancient times. Just the power of order could take the life of an immortal. Boom! The pond tumbled violently, as if it was boiling. The broken, bloody power of order rushed at the abyssal sword cauldron, but it was like a sheep entering a tiger's mouth. No matter how many there were, they were all devoured by the Nirvana order. The blood-red order that was devoured had transformed into nourishment, and as soon as it entered the world formed from the order of rebirth, it was immediately refined and absorbed by the spirits of order, the order of immortal Tao, and the order of the Netherhell. Lin Sun was already used to it. He even named the spirit of immortal path and the order of the netherworld as Little Immortal and Little Ming. In other words, the current Nirvana order was like a mother, and Wu Shuang, Little Immortal, and Little Ming were being nurtured in it. The power of order that the mother devoured prompted the transformation of the mother, and at the same time gave birth to three completely different powers of order. The Nirvana order had been residing in the abyssal sword cauldron, and it had imperceptibly nourished and refined the abyssal sword cauldron. As time went by, this treasure became more and more extraordinary. Boom! Amidst the roiling waves, the abyssal sword cauldron sank ceaselessly, and it gradually arrived at the depths of the fallen god pool. To Lin Sun's surprise, the fallen god pool was actually extremely deep. When it arrived at a depth of over 27 kilometers, Lin Sun relied on the energy of the abyssal sword cauldron to finally see a mysterious azure figure. At the bottom of the pool was a ghastly, pale, and complete skeleton. It sat cross-legged there, and it was obviously a human when it was alive. But a sore hole had appeared on the top of its skull. On the other hand, the jade-green figure had taken root within the sword cave. If one looked carefully, one would notice to one's surprise that it was a swaying jade-green divine herb. Its stem and leaves were sharp like swords, and it had an entire 18 leaves. Every single leaf was coiled with the energy of the laws of order and emanated a terrifying scarlet-red aura of curses. It seemed as if even a slight touch of it would cause one to suffer the most vicious curse in the world, and it would cause one's inner demons to arise and perish. It's actually true. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. A divine herb that grew while being nurtured by the energy of order. This undoubtedly seemed to be extremely unbelievable. Even more surprising to Lin Sun was that the Nirvana order actually appeared on its own this time, and it transformed into a mysterious lotus pattern that enveloped the azure divine herb. Bang! At this moment, the fallen god pool rumbled and roiled violently, and it faintly showed signs of exploding and collapsing. In the sky above a mountain that was extremely far away from the fallen god pool, a graceful and slender figure silently floated up into appearance. She had snow-white long hair, tender skin, ink-black brows, and slanted eyes. She wore a dark violet-colored robe, and her waist was slender, while her pair of plump and soft breasts were extremely impressive. But her expression was icy cold while her gaze was bone-piercingly cold, and it caused her extremely beautiful appearance to carry a strand of awe-inspiring dignity. At this moment, she seemed to have noticed something, causing her red lips to curl up slightly and be suffused with an arc of surprise. In the next moment, her peerlessly graceful figure teleported away. Rumble! The area where the fallen god pool resided suddenly exploded apart. The nearby mountains collapsed while surging torrents of energy through the heavens and the earth into disorder and caused the clouds and the surroundings to collapse. After that, Lin Sun's figure teleported out like a divine ray of light. At this moment, within his abyssal sword cauldron was an azure divine herb that was suppressed by the order of Nirvana, and it emitted a scarlet-red aura of the curse. On the other hand, the skeleton that the azure divine herb had taken root on and the fallen god pool had already been destroyed and dispersed, and it no longer existed. Lin Sun had never expected that he would actually obtain an unbelievable fortune when he originally came here to rescue village chief Wu Chuan and the others. If he wasn't wrong, then the azure divine herb was formed from the source energy of the cursed order, and its quality was extremely high, and it was absolutely not something an Earth rank order could compare to. However, Lin Sun still didn't know exactly what grade it was, and he intended to properly investigate it after he returned to Cloud Shadow Village. But when Lin Sun was just about to leave, a graceful figure suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Under the dark violet robe was a gorgeous and peerlessly beautiful body, and her towering breasts couldn't be concealed at all. However, her expression was too cold, and her eyes were too fierce and terrifying. Ordinary people probably wouldn't dare to look at her and size her up. Lin Sun was slightly stunned, and then he withdrew his gaze and turned to leave. But he was blocked by the beautiful woman, and she said, "Did you take away the cursed divine herb in the fallen god pool?" Her voice was low and full of majesty, with a trace of unique magnetism. Obviously, it was a kind of imposing manner cultivated from a long time in a high position. It could be seen that the origin of this beautiful woman was not simple. Cursed divine herb? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and looked at the woman again and said, "What is this?" The beautiful woman frowned and said, "Are you pretending to be confused?" Lin Sun laughed and said, "It's none of your business whether I pretend to be confused or not. You'd better get out of the way now, or you'll have to bear the consequences." He lifted his foot and walked forward. The beautiful woman frowned more and more. Seeing Lin Sun approaching step by step, she took a deep breath, and the towering breasts in front of her seemed to burst out of her clothes. But unexpectedly, she finally got out of the way. Lin Sun glanced at her and said, "Smart girl." After that, he put his hands behind his back and swaggered away. Watching his figure disappear, the beautiful woman's jade face, which had a cold and aloof expression, also flickered for a while. As one of the 4 deputy headmasters of Donglai Academy, the #1 force in Donglai region, this beautiful woman, who could be said to be powerful and famous in the entire First Heaven, could not calm down at this moment. Fallen God Ridge was just a large mountain range far away from Green Willow City. It was extremely remote, and Green Willow City was just one of the 360 cities in Shuiyin Province. As for Shuiyin Province, it was one of the many provinces in Donglai region. With the identity of this beautiful woman, let alone in this remote and desolate place, even in Shuiyin Province, when the governor of a province saw her, he had to be respectful and treat her like a god. Even those prominent figures in the Donglai region had to be courteous to her. But now, in this wilderness, she was treated so rudely by someone. This made the beautiful woman almost unable to restrain herself from attacking him. But in the end, she held back. Because from the first time she saw that person, she could not help but subconsciously feel a trace of danger. P.S. The second update is before 8 p.m. In addition, there will be a follow-up update tonight. Chapter 2673, Cloud Shadow Village. When they saw Lin Sun and Wu Chuan return together, the villagers who had been waiting there anxiously burst into cheers. They were all excited and happy. While they were talking, Lin Sun consciously left as soon as possible and returned to his courtyard. "Master Lin, you're back." Seeing Lin Sun's figure, those boys and girls who were absent-minded in cultivation all opened their eyes and looked at Lin Sun eagerly. Lin Sun said with a smile, "It's all right. Go on with your cultivation. Are you really fine?" These little guys were stunned at first, and then they all opened their eyes wide and burst into an uproar. Like I said, once Master Lin appears, who can compete with him? A little fatty shouted excitedly. "Bullshit. You said before that Master Lin was injured, and it was very likely that something bad would happen on this trip." Someone directly exposed little fatty, causing his face to turn red with anger. "I'm just worried about Master Lin. I absolutely mean no harm. Don't talk nonsense." The little fatty argued anxiously. Seeing the mess, she stood out at once with her willowy eyebrows raised. She put her hands on her waist and scolded, "Shut up and focus on cultivation." Everyone instantly became listless, shut their mouths, and started to meditate again. Lin Sun rubbed She's little head and said, "Good job." She showed her white and neat teeth and raised her head. Her beautiful and pure little face was full of pride. She said in a clear voice, "I won't let you down, brother Daoyuan." Lin Sun smiled to show his approval, and then went straight into the room. On the bed, Summer Solstice was still sleeping. Her breathing was long and steady. Her beautiful face was indescribably white. Although it was serene and quiet, it was still pale. This made Lin Sun feel pity for her, and a kind of hatred and killing intent suppressed in the bottom of his heart began to stir. If I don't kill them one day, I can't relieve my hatred. Lin Sun took a deep breath and calmed his restless mind. When he calmed down, he withdrew his gaze from Xia Ji and sat cross-legged on the futon on one side of the bed. The abyssal sword cauldron emerged quietly. Lin Sun explored it with his spiritual awareness and found that although the green grass was imprisoned and suppressed, the scarlet curse lingering between its leaves was still extremely horrifying and shocking. By now, Lin Sun had seen a lot of power of order. Judging from the aura, he could tell that the level of this strange cursed order was very likely to be heaven rank. However, it was impossible to judge which grade of heaven rank it was just by feeling it. He needed to investigate it further. But Lin Sun hadn't set foot on the path of immortality. With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to comprehend the mystery contained in the power of order. Do you want nirvana? Order will devour it. Lin Sun was conflicted. If it was an ordinary heaven rank order, Lin Sun would definitely not hesitate. Most importantly, this heaven rank order was related to the power of curses, and it was a divine herb formed from the origin. It was incomparably mystical, and Lin Sun could not help but feel a little reluctant to part with it. Well, I'll keep it for now. It won't be too late to make a decision after I set foot on the path of immortality and comprehend some mysteries of this order. After a while, Lin Sun made up his mind to put away Abyssal Sword Cauldron and intended to meditate for a while. Over the past 2 years, he had been nourished and repaired by various magical medicines and elixirs. Most of his injuries had healed, and he had rebuilt his cultivation with the Great Way Furnace Scripture. Now, although his combat power had only recovered to half of his peak, Lin Sun had a hunch that his strength would undergo a transformation when he fully recovered. After going through hardships, it was destined to be a new life and nirvana in destruction, and it was destined to be different from the past. Suddenly, there was an uproar outside the stone house. Wow, this sister is so beautiful. Shut up. Didn't you see that she was accompanied by the village chief? She must be a big shot from the city. Be careful. But that sister is really beautiful. Hearing these discussions, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. He stood up and walked out of the room. In the courtyard, when the young boys and girls were discussing noticed Lin Sun's appearance, they immediately shut up and sat cross-legged obediently. And near the entrance of the village, not far from the courtyard, Wu Chuan was talking to a woman. The woman was wearing a dark purple crane cloak. Her skin was as white as snow, and her appearance was outstanding. It was the person Lin Sun had seen before. Immediately, an imperceptible cold light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes, and he walked straight over. At the same time, Wu Chuan also saw Lin Sun. He was startled at first, but then he smiled warmly and said, "Young friend, you've come at the right time. Let me introduce you. This is Madame Nie Qingrong from the Yinyang Learning Palace in Donglai region." At the same time, he said to Lin Sun via voice transmission, "This woman has just arrived and wants to inquire about your whereabouts. I was just thinking about how to send her away, but I didn't expect you to come out." There was a bitter smile in his voice. Obviously, Wu Chuan wasn't stupid. He realized that the purpose of this woman called Nie Qingrong coming here was very likely not simple. Lin Sun nodded and said, "Village chief, you can leave first. I want to have a private chat with this Madame Nie for the Yinyang Learning Palace." Wu Chuan smiled and said, "Sure." At the same time, he gave Lin Sun a look and said to him via voice transmission, "Young friend, if she really is from the Yinyang Learning Palace, you have to be careful and try not to offend her. This is the #1 holy land of cultivation in Donglai region." As he spoke, he turned and left. Lin Sun looked at Nie Qingrong and said, "Tell me, what do you want to do here?" Nie Qingrong's phoenix eyes moved, and the cold expression on her beautiful face melted like a spring breeze. She revealed a bright and beautiful smile and said, "You seem to be very against me. Your feeling is very correct." Lin Sun's eyes were calm, and his tone was stiff. Nie Qingrong's smile froze, and her heart was filled with shame and indignation. With her cultivation, identity, and appearance, she had never been treated like this in Donglai region. She was silent for a moment, and her smile faded. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Lin Sun and said, I came here with no malice. I just want to make a deal with you. For your so-called Order of Curses? Impossible. Not to mention that I have never seen such a treasure. Even if I had it, I wouldn't trade it. Lin Sun said directly, also, with your identity and knowledge, you should understand how precious the power of order is, right? Even if it is a deal, do you think you can take out a treasure of equal value? His tone was casual, but it was very strong and stiff. Nie Qingrong was startled. She bit her rosy lips and said, My friend, my Yinyang Learning Palace may not be able to swallow this power of order, but behind the Yinyang Learning Palace are many immortal giants of the sixth heaven. I believe that as long as you state your conditions, there will definitely be a chance for discussion. Immortal giants of the sixth heaven? Many names flashed through Lin Sun's mind. Wen family, Hung family, He family, Peng family, Zhu family. Of course, there's also the Luo family. Is the Luo family standing behind the Yinyang Learning Palace? Lin Sun suddenly asked. Nie Qingrong said, No, a long time ago, the Luo family could be called the top overlord of the seventh heaven. Their foundation is tyrannical, and they can even wrestle with the immortal giants of the eighth heaven. But now, the river has been declining day by day. Even in the sixth heaven, the situation is not optimistic. How can they intervene in the affairs of the first heaven? Lin Sun secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It's not that he's afraid of the Luo family, but 2 years ago, he promised village chief Wu Chuan that he would take Xiao Shi to Green Willow City to participate in a selection, in order to let Xiao Shi enter the Yinyang Learning Palace. If the Luo family is behind the Yinyang Learning Palace, Lin Sun has to consider whether to change the place for Xiao Shi. What do you think of my proposal? Nie Qingrong asked. Lin Sun shook his head. What I said before is just a hypothesis. I have never seen the cursed order you speak of. Nie Qingrong obviously didn't believe him, but it's obvious that she is also extremely afraid of Lin Sun. In the end, she sighed and said, Forget it. It seems that this kind of opportunity is destined to have no fate with my Yinyang Learning Palace. Goodbye. She turned around and was about to leave. Lin Sun suddenly said, Fellow Taoist. Nie Qingrong turned her head and looked at Lin Sun. I hope that only you know about today's matter. Otherwise, I'm worried that even if the Yinyang Learning Palace uses all its strength, we won't be able to protect you. Lin Sun's eyes were calm, and his voice was indifferent. Nie Qingrong's delicate body slightly stiffened, and anger appeared on her jade-like face, threatening. A cold luster quietly appeared in Lin Sun's black eyes. Boom! Nie Qingrong only felt a stabbing pain in her eyes, and a great fear emerged in the depths of her soul. Her entire body felt like it had fallen into an abyss, and her vision was filled with mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the fall of gods, and the collapse of the great Tao. Her mind faintly showed signs of collapsing, and endless despair was about to drown her like a tide. You're a smart woman, and you should know that if I want to eliminate a threat, the best way is to kill you. However, there's no resentment between us, so I don't mind giving you a chance. I only hope that this matter will end here. When Lin Sun's voice sounded, Nie Qingrong instantly felt like she had been fished out of a drowning pool, and she woke up from that endless despair and fear. A layer of cold sweat appeared on her snow-white and delicate body. When she looked at Lin Sun again, that incomparably beautiful face was already filled with deep fear. It was as if she was looking at a god. It was also at this moment that she realized that her life and death were completely in the hands of Lin Sun, and the cultivation, identity, and prestige that she relied on. In the eyes of Lin Sun, it was simply like an empty shell. It was extremely laughable. Thank you for showing mercy, fellow Taoist. I won't forget a single word you said. Nie Qingrong took a deep breath, lowered her head, and said in a low voice, I hope so. Lin Sun nodded, then waved his hand and said, You can go. This was asking her to leave, but Nie Qingrong didn't dare to show the slightest bit of anger. Instead, she felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She bowed again, then turned around and hurried away. Looking from afar, the clothes on her back were soaked in cold sweat. P.S. The next update is around 10:30. Chapter 2674. Watching him leave, Lin's son turned back. Earlier, when he revealed his killing intent to intimidate his opponent's soul, he had already left a brand on his opponent's body. As long as he dared to go back on his word and do something revenge, Lin's son could find him at once. "Is everything all right, my young friend?" Wu Chuan came from a distance and asked worriedly. "It's just a trifle. You can rest assured," Lin Sun said with a smile. Wu Chuan breathed a sigh of relief and said, That's good. That's good." Time passed day by day. Cloud Shadow Village was still as quiet as before, like a paradise, undisturbed by the outside world. Gradually, Lin Sun almost forgot everything about Nye Qingrong. Spring, winter, and autumn came. Flowers bloomed and withered. Another year had passed. Time really flies. In front of the stone house, Lin Sun stood in a white robe with his hands behind his back. It had been more than 3 years since he entered Cloud Shadow Village. If summer solstice hadn't woken up, it would undoubtedly be a peaceful time. In the past 3 years, the boys and girls in the village had grown taller like bamboo shoots after the rain. They had lost some of their immaturity and were full of vitality and spirit, especially Xiao Shi, who had already grown into a graceful 15-year-old girl. Her beautiful black hair was coiled into a bun with a wooden hairpin, and even when she wore a dress made of tan meat, it was still difficult to conceal her elegant and beautiful aura. Her waist was slender, her legs were straight and slender, and she was lively and charming. Because of years of cultivation, she glowed with a different kind of girl's charm. In fact, Brooke's cultivation progress was really great. In just 3 years, she had broken through many realms and set foot on the peerless path. Now she was a real King Realm practitioner at the 8th level of longevity tribulation. "My young friend." In the distance, Wu Chuan came in a hurry with a touch of joy on his face. "I just got the news from my friend that a selection battle will be held in Green Willow City half a month later." Lin Sun said with a smile, "That's good. It's time for Brooke to go out and see the world." Wu Chuan thought of something and said, "Your injury, I've almost recovered, and it won't affect my movement." Lin Sun muttered, "In addition, please accept this storage ring." He took out a storage ring and handed it over. "There are some treasures needed for cultivation in here. Take it as a token of my appreciation." Wu Chuan panicked. "Little friend, you're not coming back? She hasn't woken up yet, has she?" Lin Sun smiled and said, "I've been bothering you for 3 years. It's time for me and Xia Ji to leave. But don't worry, I will come back to visit you if I have a chance in the future." With that said, she pushed the storage ring into Wu Chuan's hand without giving him any room to refuse. The latter seemed very helpless and disappointed. He smiled bitterly and said, "If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have mentioned Green Willow City to you." He could see that Lin Sun was determined to leave. "Haha, all good things must come to an end. I'll set off with Shi today." Lin Sun laughed. Although Wu Chuan was reluctant, he couldn't hold Xia Ji back. Lin Sun went straight back to the room and looked at Xia Ji lying quietly on the bed. With tenderness in his eyes, he murmured in his heart, "Xia Ji, we can't wait like this any longer. Sleep well. I'll take care of the revenge." He originally wanted to put Xia Ji in his life Imperial Realm as before, but he changed his mind after thinking about it. Last time in that strange starry sky, Disen invaded his life Imperial Realm without any effort. Lin Sun learned from his mistakes. This time, for the sake of safety, Lin Sun decided to put Xia Ji in Abyssal Sword Cauldron. This treasure was his life Imperial weapon. Even if he was in trouble, this treasure could not be controlled by others. And with the Nirvana Order, it could not be easily destroyed by the enemy. This would undoubtedly give Xia Ji the greatest protection. What? When Lin Sun put Xia Ji in Abyssal Sword Cauldron, an incredible scene happened. The Nirvana Order sprinkled a rain of light and surged into Xia Ji's body. This had never happened before. In other words, Lin Sun had never thought that such a change would occur when Xia Ji and the Nirvana Order met. His heart tightened. He thought the Nirvana Order was going to plunder the shackle-like power of the law of destiny in Xia Ji's body. But soon, he noticed that after the Nirvana Order surged into Xia Ji's body, it turned into rays of light and wrapped around the shackle-like law of destiny. It was as if the densely packed law of destiny was covered with a layer of cocoon silk. At the same time, a magical nirvana-like power began to linger around Xia Ji's life source. Lin Sun was shocked, and his eyes lit up. He vaguely understood. Back then in that strange, starry sky, in order to fight against the enemy, Xia Ji did not hesitate to pay any price. She forcibly activated and burned her life source, so much so that she broke the shackles of destiny. Now that the Nirvana Order surged into her, it was very likely that it would bring about a magical transformation to Xia Ji, allowing her to achieve a transformation that she had never experienced before from her extremely serious injuries. Nirvana was originally a sublimation in destruction. For example, the power of order, Little Immortal and Little Ming of the last era were both resurrected by the Nirvana Order. Now, it was very likely that Xia Ji would experience a similar nirvana. Thinking of this, Lin Sun was both excited and regretful. If he had known this, he should have placed Xia Ji in the Abyssal Sword Cauldron 3 years ago. In this case, after 3 years of nirvana, Xia Ji might have woken up long ago. She might have woken up long ago. It's not too late now. As long as she can wake up. After a while, Lin Sun calmed down. He put away the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, turned around, and walked out of the room. Let's go. When Lin Sun found she accompanied by Wu Chuan, the latter had already packed up. Okay. She was in high spirits and couldn't hide her longing and excitement. Finally, I can go and see what the outside world is like. Girl, you must be obedient along the way. Don't make trouble for your brother Daoyuan. Also, take good care of yourself. Your parents died early. Wu Chuan, an old man who had experienced many hardships, had tears in his eyes. Obviously, he was reluctant to leave. Grandpa, don't be sad. I will come back to see you often, she said obediently, holding Wu Chuan's arm. That's not necessary. As long as you live well, I will rest assured. Wu Chuan took a breath and laughed heartily. He didn't want to cry in front of his granddaughter. Don't worry, I'm here, Lin Sun said with a smile. Let's go. I will give you a ride. Wu Chuan led the way. The three of them left the Cloud Shadow village and went into the distance without disturbing the others in the village. Wu Chuan didn't stop until they were thousands of miles away. He waved his hand and said, even if you accompany a gentleman for 1,000 miles, you must say goodbye. You should go now. Lin Sun cupped his hands and saluted Senior goodbye. During the 3 years he had been in Eternal True World, Cloud Shadow Village had left behind incredibly beautiful memories for him. Wu Chuan and the other simple and kind villagers might not be powerful people, but in Lin Sun's heart, they held an incredibly great weight. Grandpa, you should go back quickly. With brother Daoyuan around, you can rest assured. She waved her hand with a smile. Her beautiful and pure face was full of brilliance. You're a young man who doesn't know the taste of sorrow. I'll go now. Wu Chuan turned around with a smile and walked into the distance. He didn't notice that she, who watched him disappear into the distance, had 2 lines of tears rolling down her fair face. She murmured, Grandpa, I won't let you down. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He was touched by the parting between grandfather and grandson, and even felt a little envious. Since he was a child, he had never experienced this kind of kinship where blood was thicker than water. After a while, Lin Sun patted Shi on the shoulder and said, Girl, no matter how great your achievements on the path of cultivation are in the future, remember to come back often to see your grandpa and the Cloud Shadow village where you were born and raised, because this is your home. Even if you get lost on the path of cultivation, you don't have to worry about not being able to return. She nodded hard, wiped away the tears on her face, and said, I will. She might not know the real meaning of Lin Sun's words, but as long as she remembered it, she would definitely remember it in the future and then experience that kind of feeling. Home. It was a place that had always seemed vague in Lin Sun's heart. But since he had Xia Ji, Zhao Jingxian, and children, he finally began to feel how important home was. It was a place that nothing in the world could replace. When Lin Sun and she were about to leave, he seemed to notice something and suddenly looked back. He saw a group of figures gathered on the mountain in the distance. They were the villagers of Cloud Shadow Village and the boys and girls who had followed Lin Sun for 3 years. "Take care, my little friend. Master Lin, you must come back to see us in the future. Sister Shi, we will come to see you in the future. Wait for us." A burst of shouting came from a distance. The villagers all smiled and withdrew, and the boys and girls also shouted and shouted. "Take care, everyone." In this situation, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel excited and waved his hand to say goodbye. At that time, the clouds were in the sky, and the mountains were green. The feeling of parting pierced the heart. One day later, in front of Green Willow City, when she saw the majestic and towering, huge, ancient city bathe in the skylight, she couldn't help but widen her watery eyes. Countless figures came in and out of the city gate, which was more than 300 meters high. Some rode spirit beasts, some rode treasure carriages, some stepped on auspicious clouds, and some rode conveyance lights. All sorts of living beings and all sorts of cultivators seemed as if they were rushing to a market, and they arrived from all directions, causing the heavens and the earth to be covered in rays of light that were like rainbows and streaks that were like the rain. It was a strange and dazzling sight. It was the first time little she had seen a city since she was born, and when she saw so many cultivators, it was as if she'd suddenly arrived at a gorgeous and colorful world, causing her to be extremely shocked in her heart. Lin Sun stood aside and looked at her with a smile. This was Xi's first real step into the world of cultivation. One day, after she had seen all the prosperity of the world and experienced the ups and downs of the world, maybe what he missed more was the innocent and naive version of himself from the past, right? P.S. Send more updates. As for the explosive update, it was postponed to the May Day holiday because Goldfish didn't plan to go out and decided to write in seclusion. Chapter 2675. After a while, Xiao Shi suddenly pointed to the top of the city gate and said in surprise, "Brother Daoyuan, look over there." On the city gate, there was a lonely bounty list. On the list, there was a tall figure, stepping in the starry sky, with a sword cauldron floating above his head. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, and his power was like that of a demon god. Below the imprint of this figure was a wanted notice. Lin Sun, the inheritor of the starry sky, ancient Tao square inch, extremely vicious, cruel, and cold. There were a lot of words like a trial, more than 1,000 words, clearly regarding Lin Sun as a treacherous and incomparably vicious sinner. At the end, there was a row of mysterious imprints, representing the forces of the immortal emperors who wanted Lin Sun. There were the top 10 forces of the 8th heaven, such as the Fu family, the Qi family, the Zhong family, the Mu family, etc. There were the 4 eastern emperor families of the 7th heaven. There were also the Wen, Heng, Zhu, Rong, Luo families of the 6th heaven. Anyone who saw such a wanted list would be shocked and find it hard to believe. When Lin Sun saw it himself, he couldn't help but be shocked. What a remote city Green Willow City is, located in the 1st heaven, Donglai region, and Water Cloud continent. But such a wanted list is hung here. There's no need to think about it. There are probably similar wanted lists in other places of the 1st heaven. However, Lin Sun noticed that the people coming and going near the city gate seemed to be used to it. Not many people paid attention to the wanted list at all. "Brother Daoyuan, why do I feel that that person looks a bit like you?" Xiao Shi turned around and looked at Lin Sun with her watery eyes, comparing him with the figure on the wanted list. "Little girl, your eyes are like torches." "Yes, that's me." Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. Xiao Shi pursed her lips and laughed. Her laughter was crisp and clear. "I don't believe it. How can a wanted criminal in this world dare to admit his identity so calmly and calmly?" Moreover, after careful identification, she found that the two are very different. They are not the same person at all. "Is that so?" Lin Sun laughed and didn't explain. In fact, Not to mention Xiao Shi, even if the Zhu Shui ancestor was here, if he didn't use special magic, it would be impossible to see through his identity. Let's go. Let's enter the city. Lin Sun walked into the Green Willow City with Brooke. The spacious streets within the city crisscrossed and extended in all directions. Row upon row of ancient and exquisite buildings stood side by side, and the bustling crowd moved back and forth ceaselessly like flowing water. The sounds of shouting and hawking resounded everywhere, and the clamorous waves of noise rose and fell, causing the city to seem extremely bustling and flourishing. In Lin Sun's eyes, the entire city was covered in layer upon layer of invisible restrictive energy, and it was like an extra-large spirit gathering formation that drew the spiritual energy from all directions. It was a rather magnificent sight. However, in terms of scale, it was far inferior to Chaotian City in the Great Thousand Battle Domain. After all, there were many immortal emperor clans in Chaotian City, and the spirit of order, Hao Tian, was in charge. Almost all of them were powerful characters above the emperor realm, and there was no lack of immortal emperors. Green Willow City might be located in the first heaven of Eternal True World, but it was still very remote, and the level of cultivation of the living beings who walked in the city varied. There were Longevity Tribulation Realm cultivators like Xiao Shi, as well as Sage Realm and Quasi-Emperor Realm cultivators. There were also Emperor Realm cultivators, but they were rare. Lin Sun understood after thinking about it. This was, after all, a small and remote city in the first heaven. It was impossible for it to have a scene where there were as many Emperor Realm cultivators as there were in the Great Thousand Battle Domain. Moreover, the Eternal True World was vast, and there were countless living beings who had lived in it for generations. It was impossible for everyone to easily step into the Emperor Realm. Otherwise, the Emperor Realm would be too worthless. Lin Sun took Xiao Shi on a stroll as he experienced the sights in the city. This was the first time Xiao Shi walked out of Cloud Shadow Village and came to the outside world. Everything she saw and felt was new. As she looked around, her eyes were almost not enough to take in everything. Lin Sun accompanied her with a smile, appearing to be very patient. He was not stingy with money along the way. All the treasures that little stream took a second glance and were all bought by him. Divine materials, medicinal pills, rare treasures. Even if they were not worth much to Lin Sun, he did not hesitate when he spent money. During his years in the Great Thousand Battle Domain, he had collected hundreds of millions of first-class Eternal Void Source crystals. This small amount of money was nothing to Lin Sun. In the end, Xiao Shi felt embarrassed and repeatedly dissuaded Lin Sun from spending more money. Lin Sun agreed, but when he encountered some treasures that were suitable for Xiao Shi, he would not hesitate to buy them. They strolled for several hours. Xiao Shi finally adapted to the bustling atmosphere. Her eyes sparkled as she said, "Brother Dao Yuan, if I have the ability in the future, I must let Grandpa and the others move into the city." This could be considered a very simple vision. Lin Sun smiled and said, "Definitely." As they talked, the two arrived in front of a grand and solemn ancient building. This was the City Lord's Mansion. All the young men and women who were qualified to participate in the selection would register at the City Lord's Mansion, then go through a test and the final selection. Those who passed the selection would be sent to the Donglai region's Yinyang Academy to cultivate. Every 10 years, Azure Willow City would hold such a selection. Every time, it would attract many young men and women from the territories near Azure Willow City to participate. However, in the end, only 10 people could go to the Yinyang Academy to cultivate, and the competition could be said to be extremely fierce. When Lin Sun and Xiao Shi arrived, there was already a sea of people near the City Lord's Mansion. They were surrounded by so many figures that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Those who participate in the registration can enter the City Lord's Mansion. As for the others, wait outside obediently. A guard in black armor shouted, maintaining order at the scene. "Xiao Shi, go ahead. I will wait for you here," Lin Sun urged. At present, it was only the registration and the test. The real selection would be 3 days later. Xiao Shi took a deep breath and nodded. She walked straight forward, and her delicate figure quickly disappeared from the city lord's mansion. Lin Sun stood outside, thinking in his heart while waiting. Before he entered the great thousand battles realm in the past, the He family's progenitor Yun Yuan had sent him an invitation. He hoped that if Lin Sun could successfully reach the eternal true world, he could head to the He family and serve as a Tao attendant for a peerless great emperor of the He family. This was to head to a primal chaos secret realm and fight for the power of order that was born there. At that time, Lin Sun did not refuse, because according to his plans, he would travel with the identity of a guest of He clan. This way, he could avoid many risks, and, at the same time, he could use He clan's resources to understand some information related to the eternal world and the Luo clan. However, that was then, and this was now. In the boundless thousand battle domains, his identity had been completely exposed, and he had become a wanted target of many immortal emperor clans in the eternal world. If he rashly went to He clan at this time, it would clearly be harmful. In fact, if He clan found out about his identity, there was no telling what would happen. Therefore, this matter could only be put aside. I wonder if eldest senior brother and the others are still in the sixth heaven. Lin Sun thought of the news he had obtained in the boundless thousand battle domains, and he could not help but look forward to meeting his senior brothers and sisters again. But soon, he calmed down and temporarily suppressed the thought of looking for eldest senior brother and the others. Right now, he was still in the first heaven. Although it had been 3 years since he arrived, he had always been in Cloud Shadow Village and was not familiar with everything in the eternal world. His top priority was not to take any action, but to understand and familiarize himself with everything in the eternal world as soon as possible. Only then would he be able to better plan his next journey. Most importantly, he had not completely recovered his strength. Even if he wanted to take revenge now, he could only endure it for the time being. In the end, Lin Sun decided to only do 2 things before heading to the sixth heaven. The first thing he needed to do was to remove the seal on the bronze box left by Master Lu. This treasure contained clues related to his mother, Luo Qingxuan. Over the years, Lin Sun's doppelganger of Tao Dao had been cracking it, but until now he had only cracked half of the heavy restriction seals. The second thing was related to breaking through to the next level of cultivation. As long as he could step on the path of immortality before entering the sixth heaven, the threat brought by the immortal emperor clans would undoubtedly be greatly reduced. Even if he entered the sixth heaven, Lin Sun had the confidence to fight against the Luo family and test their strength. Just as Lin Sun was thinking, a chaotic sound of fighting suddenly came from the city lord's mansion, mixed with angry shouts and screams. What happened? Did they fight? The people waiting outside the city lord's mansion were alarmed. They stretched their necks and released their divine senses to investigate. And almost immediately, as if he had noticed something, a cold light flashed in the depths of Lin Sun's eyes, and his figure disappeared into thin air. In the city lord's mansion, a 10 or so year old handsome youth wearing a luxurious robe angrily shouted, "You dare to kill my personal retainer? Quick, capture this little slut for me." Beside him, a squire was lying in a pool of blood, staining the ground. And not far away, a group of guards of the city lord's mansion walked towards a young girl with a murderous look. The latter had a fair face and was dressed in a beast-skin dress. It was Xiao Shi. However, her expression was full of anger, and her watery eyes were surging with anger. "I came to sign up for the selection, but you want to take me away. Is there any reason?" "Reason? In this city lord's mansion, I am the reason." The handsome young man in the luxurious robe was filled with disdain as he laughed savagely. "You little slut, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. It's your fortune that this young master has taken a liking to you. I originally intended to keep you by my side as a concubine, but now this young master has changed his mind. Listen up, whoever captures her will be rewarded to you as a servant, and you can play with her however you want." His voice was cold and gloomy. Not far away, a group of young boys and girls who participated in the registration were silent, looking at Xiao Shi with pity in their eyes. Why did she have to offend the young master of the city lord's mansion? P.S. Around 7:30 a.m. In addition, I know there will be children who want to complain, but before complaining, I hope to watch the whole story before vomiting. Chapter 2676. The handsome young man in luxurious robes was called Qin Huiran, and he was the youngest son of Azure Willow City's governor, Qin Xiaotong. His natural talent was superb, and he was extraordinarily intelligent. However, he had a violent and profligate temperament, and he was a little overlord of Azure Willow City. Not to mention ordinary cultivators. Even some figures with status in the city didn't dare offend such a young man easily. Now, little Shi had killed Qin Huiran's personal lackey, and it had caused Qin Huiran to be furious. As far as everyone was concerned, little Shi, who was obviously not from a great clan, was bound to be unable to escape calamity. Capture this little girl and present her to the young master. The guards had savage expressions and carried cruel expressions as they approached step by step towards little Shi. Their discerning gazes were long since discerned that little Shi, who was only wearing a bee-skin dress, was bound to not be a noble figure, and it was extremely likely that she was from a remote clan near Azure Willow City. To them, such a small character was not the slightest bit of deterrence at all. As they gazed at little Shi's expression that was mixed with panic and rage, these guards couldn't help but arouse a feeling of excitement that was like a cat playing with a mouse. Even they had no choice but to admit that the young master's discerning ability was extraordinary indeed. Even though the clothes of the young woman before them were shabby, it was unable to conceal her natural beauty. She was beautiful and charming, and her pair of straight and slender legs were long and slender. In another few years, she would surely grow into a great beauty that could bring calamity to an entire country. Little Shi was forced step by step into a corner, and her delicate and pretty figure trembled slightly from rage. When she saw that she was about to be surrounded, she couldn't restrain herself any longer and said, "I'll fight all of you to the death." Bang! She raised her hand and charged forward while a glow flowed on her body, and she seemed as if she was about to fight desperately. The guards revealed disdainful expressions because a small figure at the longevity tribulation realm was really unable to arouse their attention. One of the guards made a move and directly grabbed towards little Shi's throat with the intention of capturing her in one strike. But his hand had just stretched out when a crack resounded as his tendons and bones exploded into pieces, and it fell limply to the ground. It hurt to the point he howled in pain. Following that, the guards that surrounded the stream let out muffled groans one by one, and as if all the bones in their bodies had been shattered, they fell limply to the ground. The surroundings were deathly silent, while everyone within the hall was shocked by this sudden scene, and they almost thought they were seeing things. After all, this was the city governor's estate, and all those guards were the elite generals of the city governor's estate. Every single one of them possessed cultivations at the Saint King realm or above, and there was no lack of peerless existences amongst them. But in the blink of an eye, they silently fell to the ground. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared and stood in front of Shi, who was also shocked by the scene. He asked gently, "Girl, are you hurt?" The panic and anger on Brooke's face dissipated when she saw Lin Sun. Her eyes turned slightly red as she asked, "Brother Dao Yuan, did I cause you trouble?" Lin Sun felt sorry for him and said, "It's no trouble at all. Just leave it to me." He turned around and looked at Qin Huiran, who was dressed in luxurious robes nearby. "What do you want to do?" Qin Huiran, who had long been shocked by this sudden situation, changed his face slightly and said sternly, "This is the city governor's mansion. How dare you break in without permission and hurt people? Are you tired of living?" As he said, he waved his hand, "Come on, kill this evil thief." Many guards near the city governor's mansion had already been alarmed and rushed into the hall. At this time, they all showed their weapons and looked at Lin Sun unkindly. "Your Excellency, do you want to surrender yourself, or let us do it?" A guard shouted coldly. Bang! Before his voice died away, he flew out and fell to the ground paralyzed, unable to get up again. Many people's faces changed because they didn't see how Lin Sun attacked. Every debt has its debtor. "You'd better not force me to kill people," Lin Sun said calmly. The other guards nearby trembled in their hearts and looked uncertain. "Go! Kill him! Kill him!" Qin Huiran shouted. He also seemed to realize that something was wrong, so he had already fled out of the hall while shouting, "Little bastard, didn't you say that you were the boss in the city governor's mansion? Why did you run away?" Lin Sun's eyes flashed with disdain, and he grasped in the air. Suddenly, Qin Huiran, like a small bug, was caught by an invisible palm force and smashed in front of Lin Sun. As soon as he was about to get up, Lin Sun kicked him in the back, and a sound of bones breaking followed. Although the young master of the city governor's mansion was in great pain, he was still extremely fierce and shouted, "You're finished, you're finished. When my father comes, you and that little bitch will both die." Bang! Lin Sun looked calm and exerted force on his toes. Qin Huiran only felt as if thousands of swords were stabbing into his heart. The endless pain almost tore him apart. He wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound at all. At this moment, he finally felt frightened. "My friend, please be merciful." The guards also panicked and looked at Lin Sun with surprise and doubt in their eyes for fear of harming the innocent. For so many years, it was the first time that they had met a ruthless person who dared to commit murder in the city governor's mansion. Moreover, Lin Sun was so calm and obviously had no fear. "Brother Daoyuan, let's just let it go. I'll be fine," she said worriedly. Lin Sun said in a gentle voice, "Girl, you have to remember that when you encounter such things in the future, flinching means a guilty conscience and showing weakness, which will only make the other side take advantage of you. Just stand aside and watch how I deal with this matter." It was the first time that she walked out of Cloud Shadow Village. She was like a blank piece of paper, knowing nothing. Lin Sun felt that it was necessary to take advantage of this matter to give her some advice. Otherwise, when he left, no one would protect her like this anymore. Okay. She took a deep breath and stood aside. She also calmed down and realized that Lin Sun did this for her. The city governor is coming. Not long after, a loud shout sounded. Suddenly, there was a commotion inside and outside the city governor's mansion, and the onlookers nearby subconsciously made way for him. A majestic man in a purple robe strode over with a group of subordinates. It was Qin Xiaotong, the city governor of Green Willow City. He was like a dominator in the eyes of the practitioners of Green Willow City. When he saw the situation in the hall, Qin Xiaotong's eyes narrowed, and when he saw Qin Huiran, who was stepped under Lin Sun's feet, his face turned livid. "Fellow practitioner, don't you take me seriously by committing murder in my territory?" Qin Xiaotong's eyes were like lightning, glancing at Lin Sun, trying to find something. But what made him frown was that Lin Sun's breath was indifferent and ordinary, and he couldn't see through it at all. "Is this the style of you old thing to make a false accusation without asking the right and wrong?" Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent. "The reason why I didn't kill this little bastard and waited here was to give you, his father, a chance to atone for your sins. But now it seems that it's unnecessary." Qin Xiaodong's heart tightened and his face suddenly changed. "Fellow practitioner, let's talk it out. As long as you let my son live, I promise to let bygones be bygones." The onlookers couldn't help but click their tongues at the moment. The city governor was here, but the young man was still so strong, which was completely beyond their expectation. "Brother, forgive people wherever possible. It's a blessing, not a curse, to take a step back." Someone couldn't help persuading. "Yes, this is Green Willow City. If she offends the city governor, I'm afraid that the little girl will not be qualified to participate in the election. My friend, apologize to the city governor seriously and let Child Qin go. This is the wisest thing to do. Don't be impulsive." Many people spoke one after another. Instead of persuading, it was better to say that they were helping Qin Xiaotong, the powerful city governor. How could Lin Sun not hear these words? He couldn't help sneering. "How about exchanging your lives for the life of this little bastard?" Those practitioners who had tried to persuade Lin Sun before suddenly shut up. They all looked angry and ashamed. They thought that Lin Sun was courting death by doing this. "What on earth do you want to do?" Qin Xiaodong's face was livid, and he said one word at a time. Lin Sun said, "It's very simple. You come here and destroy this little bastard in person, and I'll pretend that nothing happened." "You've gone too far." Qin Xiaodong was furious and his eyes were red. If Qin Huiran hadn't been captured, he would have taken action at the first time. Lin Sun said with a faint smile, "What? Do you think I dare to make such a request by threatening this little bastard?" Everyone nearby couldn't help muttering in their hearts. Wasn't this nonsense? Qin Xiaodong also thought so. The next moment, Lin Sun lifted his foot and kicked Qin Huiran away. Qin Huiran rolled to Qin Xiaodong's side. "Now, I've changed my mind. I'm not only going to destroy this little bastard, but also you, old bastard," Lin Sun said casually. Seeing that Lin Sun released his son so directly, Qin Xiaodong was stunned. Then he grinned with ecstasy and said, "Who do you think you are? I'll send you to hell right now." He stepped forward and took action at the first time. Boom! A strand of copious and violent Emperor realm pressure swept out from him, and it caused the hearts of everyone in the vicinity to feel cold. However, as Lin Sun stretched out his hand and sent out a palm, the coercion released by Qin Xiaodong was suddenly smashed and exploded. Qin Xiaodong was slapped to the ground with a bang and fell on his face like a dog eating shit. The whole audience was silent and dumbfounded. What was going on? The dignified lord of Green Willow City, a powerful Emperor realm existence, was suppressed like a fly? You! Qin Xiaodong's face turned red, and his eyes were full of horror. He finally realized that something was wrong. Lin Sun was not an ordinary person. He had obviously kicked an iron plate. Do you realize it now? It's too late. Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and he was about to do something. But at this moment, an old and deep voice suddenly sounded. "Young man, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Can you give me some face and stop now?" Along with the voice, a skinny and tall old man appeared in the hall. A formless and terrifying pressure spread out along with it. People inside and outside the governor's mansion held their breath and were all shocked. Then they recognized the identity of the old man. They couldn't help but widen their eyes and show an uncontrollable awe. Huashingdu. There were more than 100 cities in Watercloud Continent, and Green Willow City was only one of them. The old man, named Huashingdu, was the lord of Watercloud Continent. He was an all-powerful and extremely senior emperor ancestor. P.S. It will break out on May 2nd, no less than 5 minutes. At the end of the month, please take a look at your account. If you have spare monthly tickets, please vote. Goldfish thanks in advance. Chapter 2677. For everyone, the appearance of Huashingdu was no less than the arrival of a legendary figure. Their faces were full of awe. Watercloud Continent included 180 cities, and Huashingdu could become the lord of Watercloud Continent. His strength had long been deeply rooted in the hearts of every practitioner over the years. "Your Excellency, save my poor child." In this silent atmosphere, Qin Xiaodong, who was slapped down by Lin Sun, shouted excitedly as if he had grasped a life-saving straw. Huashingdu frowned and looked at Lin Sun, saying, "What do you think of my proposal?" Everyone couldn't help but look at him and thought, since His Excellency Huashingdu has come, how can you not give him face? Unexpectedly, Lin Sun ignored Huashingdu and turned to Brooke beside him, saying, "Do you think that little bastard is an idiot?" Brooke was stunned for a moment and said, "Of course not. Then you think that old thing is an idiot? He can be the lord of a city, so he is certainly not stupid." Lin Sun nodded and said, "You're right. They look pitiful now because they provoked me. But if I'm not here this time, what do you think will happen to you?" Little She pondered for a moment and shuddered. If she was captured with her strength, how could she resist? At that time, he would be humiliated and tortured to the point of begging for death. Similarly, if any of those spectators were you, then you would definitely suffer a miserable fate, whereas this pair of father and son would still be able to live happily and freely. When Lin Sun said this, the expressions of those onlookers became a little unnatural, because this was the reality. There were not so many miracles in the world, and Qin Xiaodong and his son were by no means fools. The reason why they were defeated this time was that they kicked an iron plate. In fact, who would have thought that a girl dressed in plain clothes would be followed by a great hidden master? "Young man, what do you mean?" Huashingdu's face was a little unsightly. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was ignored by Lin Sun, which seriously provoked his dignity. With his status, he was treated in such a manner. This made him feel extremely uncomfortable in his heart. What do you mean? If your daughter was treated like this, would you still clamor that it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive? Lin Sun sneered. If someone suddenly jumps out and persuades you to take a step back and stop, how will you feel? Hua Xingdo's expression became gloomy as he said, "So you're not going to give this old master any face?" The atmosphere in the hall became oppressive. "I'm only arguing with you because there's no enmity between us, but you're using your so-called face to threaten me." Speaking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help laughing and looked at Hua Xingdo faintly. "Is this called shameless?" These words weren't just impolite. They were filled with contempt and humiliation. The onlookers all stared with wide eyes in disbelief. This fellow was simply insane, daring to slander Hua Xingdo like this. Was he really not afraid of death? Seeing this, Hua Xingdo's old face went pale and his eyes filled with murderous intent. After so many years, this was the first time he had encountered such an arrogant madman. Boom! A strand of terrifying martial ancestor realm might surged out from his body, causing his imposing aura to be like the heavens, and it pressed down upon the entire hall to the point it suddenly started trembling and shaking violently. The nearby practitioners even avoided him, looking horrified. But Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it and said indifferently, "You want to fight because you're ashamed and angry? Since that's the case, I'll cripple you today as well." "You're boasting shamelessly." Hua Xingdo was so angry that he laughed and was about to take action. Wait. Suddenly, a cold voice resounded. Following that, a beautiful woman wearing a dark purple robe with her black hair coiled into a bun walked into the hall. As soon as she appeared, her peerless charm became the focus of the audience. However, the spectators merely took a glance at him before they were horrified and terrified. They lowered their heads at the first possible moment, as if they were subjects that had seen their king. It was like taking another glance at him would be a great blasphemy and sin. Hua Xingdo, who was furious before, showed a look of surprise at this moment. He immediately stepped forward and bowed. "Your Excellency, how come you're alarmed?" At the sight of this, the hearts of the crowd shook and their minds went blank. What kind of status did Lord Hua Xingdo have? But now he was so humble. At this moment, everyone could see that this peerless woman who suddenly appeared had an extraordinary background. Otherwise, how could she make the Lord of Watercloud Continent bow his head? But the woman ignored Hua Xingdo and went straight to Lin Sun. She bowed her head and lowered her eyes, saying in a soft voice with a trace of awe, "Taoist brother, I haven't seen you for a year. How have you been?" The audience was stunned and fell silent. Such a scene almost made people's jaws drop. What was going on? Especially Hua Xingdo, who still maintained a humble posture. When he saw this scene, he felt as if 10,000 wild horses were roaring in his heart, and his whole person was dumbfounded. Could it be that he had offended a great figure who was hiding his strength? Thinking of this, Hua Xingdo's body stiffened and his cheeks stiffened. His old face was even uglier than crying. What the fuck was this? "It's you, that beautiful big sister." Little she, who was in a daze, couldn't help but cry out. A year ago, this beautiful woman in purple had appeared in Cloud Shadow Village. How could she not remember? This person was naturally the deputy palace master of the Yin Yang Academy, Nie Qingrong. "After a year, little sister, you've grown even more beautiful." Nie Qingrong's voice was gentle. At this moment, everyone in the hall felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They stared blankly at this scene. How could they not understand that the identities of Lin Sun and little she were not as simple as they had imagined? "You're also here to mediate?" Lin Sun frowned. A year ago, he had warned Nie Qingrong. Until now, nothing had happened, and there had been no disturbances that involved Cloud Shadow Village. This undoubtedly proved that Nie Qingrong was very smart. She did not leak information about him, nor did she take any revenge. Just based on this point, Lin Sun's impression of Nie Qingrong changed greatly. But if she was here to mediate, it would be different. Nie Qingrong hurriedly explained, "Fellow Taoist, you've misunderstood. This time, I am in charge of the Yin Yang Academy's disciple selection in Watercloud Continent. I just didn't expect to see fellow Taoists here. I see. Lin Sun finally understood. Nie Qingrong was the deputy palace master of the Yin Yang Academy. It was reasonable for her to appear before this election. At this moment, Hua Xingdou walked forward and bowed. He had an ashamed expression, and his voice trembled. This old man has eyes, but failed to see. I unintentionally offended Lord. I hope Lord can forgive me. His head was almost touching his feet. This humble atonement caused the spectators' jaws to almost drop to the ground. Was this still the Lord of Watercloud Continent, who was like a god in their hearts? Qin Shaodong was also stunned. His body was cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. The scene before him made him feel extremely uneasy. It was as if an unexpected disaster would befall him at any time. As he looked at Hua Xingdou, who was bowing before him, Lin Sun could not help but sneer. Only in this kind of situation will an old man like you learn to be humble and give up your so-called face. Hua Xingdou lowered his head even more, and his voice was hoarse and bitter. Please calm down, Lord. Right now, even Nie Qingrong had a respectful attitude. So how could he still dare to put on airs? How could he still dare to care about his so-called dignity and face? He would no longer care about his old face. So what if he was a sovereign ancestor? In the eyes of the true giants in the eternal true world, he was just a character who could be killed and taken away. If you want me to calm down, it's very simple. You take action and cripple this pair of father and son, Lin Sun said casually. Thump! Qin Shaodong, who had been terrified and uneasy for a long time, had just crawled up to his feet. He immediately knelt on the ground and cowed out. Lord, spare me, spare me. Lin Sun ignored him and said to Xiaoxi, Girl, how do you feel now? Xiaoxi let out an ah, and just as she was about to say something, Lin Sun stopped her with a smile. He said, just hide it in your heart. When your cultivation gets higher, you'll slowly understand the reason behind it. As he spoke, he brought Xiaoxi and walked straight out of the hall. From the beginning to the end, he did not look at Hua Xingdou and Qin Shaodong again. You settle the matter here. If you can't, then I'll settle it. Nie Qingrong glanced at Hua Xingdou with her beautiful eyes, then turned around and chased after Lin Sun and Xiaoxi, until Nie Qingrong's graceful and proud figure disappeared. Only then did Hua Xingdou raise his head. His expression had already become ghastly and terrifying, and his eyes shone with an intimidating light as if he wanted to devour someone. Qin Shaodong, do you know your crime? His words were cold. Lord, Qin Shaodong was already out of his wits, and his face was deathly pale. Just as he opened his mouth to explain, Hua Xingdou suddenly struck him with his palm. Bang! Qin Shaodong coughed up blood, and his whole body twitched. His cultivation was like a punctured ball, dissipating into thin air. His whole person seemed to have aged countless years in an instant. Don't blame me. You asked for all of this, Hua Xingdou said, and looked at Qin Huiran, who was not far away. This teenager had long been scared to the point that his soul left his body. When he was stared at by Hua Xingdou's gaze, his eyes rolled, and he fainted. Trash! Hua Xingdou's eyes flashed with disdain, and he flicked his finger. Bang! Qin Huiran's cultivation was also completely abolished. Come, throw this father and son pair out. From today onwards, the position of the city lord of Azure Willow City will be handed over to someone else. Hua Xingdou ordered. Immediately, a group of guards who were previously obedient to Qin Shaodong and his son rushed out and dragged them away. Witnessing all of this, the people who were nearby were unable to recover for a long time, and a shock in their hearts spread uncontrollably throughout their bodies. Previously, who dared to believe that this dispute would actually end in such a bizarre way? Chapter 2678. Azure Willow City. On the bustling street, she was a little absent-minded. What she had just experienced had a huge impact on her. She needed some time to calm herself down. Lin Sun did not say anything else. Perhaps this was the price of growth. No matter how pure a piece of paper was, it would become a different picture after going through the trials of the world. Brother, Nie Qingrong, who was dressed in a deep purple crane cloak, caught up to him. Her skin was smooth and delicate, her waist was slender, and her ample breasts were astonishing. She was a peerless beauty, but her temperament was as cold as ice. It was a strong visual contrast. Just say it. Lin Sun stopped and looked at Nie Qingrong. He was not surprised that she had caught up to him. Nie Qingrong lowered her beautiful eyes and said softly, I saw that this little sister wants to sign up for the selection. I think she wants to go to the Yin Academy to cultivate. Lin Sun nodded, that's right. Nie Qingrong took a deep breath and mustered up her courage. She looked at Lin Sun with her beautiful phoenix eyes and said, Brother, if you trust me, I can help you with this matter. Why do you want to do this? Lin Sun asked. Nie Qingrong thought for a while and said, If I say that I want to form a good relationship with you, will you believe me? Lin Sun said, I will. Nie Qingrong could not help but be surprised by such an unhesitating answer. She was originally prepared to explain patiently, but now she did not know what to say. Girl, are you willing to go to the Yin Academy to cultivate with her? Lin Sun looked at Little She beside him. Little She was obviously very excited. Her watery eyes were filled with longing, but she still said hesitantly, Brother Dao Yuan, I'll listen to you. This scene suddenly reminded Lin Sun of Zhao Jingxian. Back in the star-chest sea of the ancient desolation, Ao Zhentian had come to take Zhao Jingxian to participate in the 10,000 Dragons' immortal gathering in the true dragon world. At that time, Zhao Jingxian had also replied in the same way. Thinking of this, Lin Sun could not help but smile and said, Then let's go. He had also thought it through. If Nie Qingrong could take care of little Shi in the future in the Yin Academy, she would definitely not be bullied. Because of this, he gave Nie Qingrong an affirmative answer, which could be considered a gesture of goodwill. Nie Qingrong was clearly very excited as well. Her beautiful eyes were filled with ripples as she gently said, With little sister's talent, you will definitely be able to shine in the Heaven and Earth Academy in the future. Lin Sun said, I just hope she is safe. Nie Qingrong was startled and said, Don't worry, Dao brother. In the Heaven and Earth Academy, no one dares to bully this little sister. His voice was filled with absolute confidence. I happen to have nothing to do. I wonder if Yin Academy welcomes an outsider like me to visit? Lin Sun asked. Nie Qingrong's beautiful eyes brightened, and her gentle voice carried a trace of joy as she said, If Dao brother is able to come, then my Heaven and Earth Dao Palace will surely be honored. My lord. In the distance, Huixing Do hurried over and bowed respectfully to Nie Qingrong before bowing to Lin Sun. The Qin father and son have been dealt with properly. This old one has come to report to senior. Lin Sun nodded and did not express his opinion. Nie Qingrong said, Huixing Do, I will be leaving today. You will be in charge of the selection of disciples. Huixing Do quickly nodded and agreed. Dao brother, do you want to leave immediately? Nie Qingrong looked at Lin Sun. Yes. Lin Sun agreed. Huixing Do wiped his cold sweat as he watched Lin Sun and Nie Qingrong disappear into the distance. As an emperor ancestor, he had not been so fearful for a long time. Whoosh! In the depths of the clouds, a huge treasure ship was flying. On the treasure ship, Lin Sun casually leaned on the bow and drank wine from a wine gourd. From time to time, a pleasant laughter came from the cabin behind him. One was soft and charming, and the other was clear and melodious. It was Nie Qingrong talking to Xiao Shi. From the moment they boarded the treasure ship, Nie Qingrong had the intention of befriending Xiao Shi. She lowered her status and communicated with Xiao Shi. Not long after, the relationship between the two became quite harmonious. Lin Sun saw this, but did not say anything. In fact, it was the first time Xiao Shi walked out of the Cloud Shadow Village and saw everything in the first heaven. Wasn't he the same? Unlike Xiao Shi, he just had extremely rich experience. While drinking, Lin Sun took out a jade slip. This was an ancient book called The Classics of All Worlds that he bought when he was wandering in Green Willow City. It recorded some things related to the first heaven, the 4 great territories, the 4 great academies, the forbidden areas of the world, the blessed land of the spiritual mountains, the ancient secrets, the immortal mountains of the outer regions. There were hundreds of catalogs in this, the classics of all worlds. Each catalog was all-encompassing and vast. Almost all the matters of the first heaven from ancient times to the present were written in detail. Lin Sun couldn't help but read with great interest. Gradually, he gained some understanding of the first heaven. According to the book, in the entire eternal true world, the first heaven was located at the outermost area. Its territory was comparable to the area of hundreds of great worlds. Such a large territory was divided into 4 major regions, namely Donglai, Xixia, Beifeng, and Nanhua. In each region, there is an academy, namely the Yin and Yang Academy in Donglai region, the Stardow Academy in Xixia region, the Desolate Wood Academy in Xixia region, and the Ice Arrival Academy in Nanhua region. These 4 great academies represent the top 4 forces in the first heaven. They are the overlords of the first heaven. Behind each academy stands different immortal emperor clans. Almost all of these immortal emperor clans are behemoths in the 6th heaven. Not only that, in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th heaven, the situation is the same. For example, in the 2nd heaven, there's a great force called 9 Mystical Academy. It is definitely the number 1 force in the 2nd heaven. However, almost all of the high-level figures in the 9 Mystical Academy come from different immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven. In other words, the 9 Mystical Academy represents the power of all the immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven. A similar situation exists in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th heaven. The reason for this is very simple. The immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven are like nobles living above the 9th heaven. They seem to be entrenched in the 6th heaven, but their forces have long penetrated into the different domains below the 6th heaven. The purpose of doing this is nothing more than to obtain more cultivation resources. For example, the Yin and Yang Academy is located in the 1st heaven and is the overlord of the Donglai region. However, every once in a while, they need to send the cultivation resources they collect to the 6th heaven. Only in this way can they get the support of the immortal emperor clans. These cultivation resources include all kinds of minerals, spiritual veins, divine materials, rare treasures. In short, as long as it is related to cultivation, it will be regarded as tribute and sent to the 6th heaven. In addition, if they can find new order forces, they will also get special rewards. At the same time, the existence of the Yin and Yang Academy has another purpose, that is to collect talented young cultivators for the immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven, and so on. Most forces like the Yin and Yang Academy shoulder the task of collecting cultivation resources for the immortal emperor clans and sending outstanding disciples. This is like the tax in the secular dynasties, collecting taxes from the counties, state capitals, and provinces, and then transporting them to the imperial capital. In the same way, the imperial examinations carried out in the counties, state capitals, and provinces are nothing more than to send talents to the imperial capital. In this comparison, the 1st heaven is equivalent to a county or county. The 4 academies of the 1st heaven are equivalent to the 4 yamans in charge of collecting taxes and selecting talents. After understanding this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. Exhausting the financial, material, and human resources of the 5 heavens to work for the immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven, it's hard for them not to be powerful. However, Lin Sun also knows that this is the law of the big fish eating the small fish. The cultivation resources collected by the immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven are probably also tribute to the 7th heaven. This kind of gradual evolution has formed the power structure and system of the entire eternal true world. After thinking about it, Lin Sun began to focus on studying the forces of the 4 academies. Behind the Yin and Yang Academy, there are 3 immortal emperor clans, namely the He family, the Zhu family, and the Hong family. Among them, Lin Sun is very familiar with the He family, which is one of the 4 immortal emperor clans, namely the He family, the Hung family, the Peng family, and the He family. Lin Sun is also not unfamiliar with the Zhu family. In the past, when he was in the second immortal sky pass of the boundless thousand-battle domain, he attended the banquet held by Peng Tianxiang in the city lord's mansion. It was at that banquet that Lin Sun killed an immortal emperor named Zhu Lin. This Zhu Lin is from the Zhu family of the sixth heaven. When he saw this, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect that there would be such an enemy among the immortal emperor clans behind the Yin and Yang Academy. One had to know that the Zhu family was one of the undying emperor clans that were on the wanted list in front of all the cities in the world. Lin Sun isn't afraid of anything, but he has to consider whether Little Stream, who is related to him, will be implicated in the Yin and Yang Academy if his identity is revealed in the future. It seems that I have to solve this matter first. Lin Sun muttered to himself. If this hidden danger isn't eliminated, it will definitely be harmful to Little Stream. While he was thinking, Lin Sun seemed to notice something, and his eyes suddenly looked into the distance. Almost at the same time, a loud laughter came from the depths of the clouds in the distance. Ha ha ha! I didn't expect to see Palace Master Nie's ship here. Could this be the will of heaven? The clouds collapsed, the void trembled, and a group of powerful and dazzling figures suddenly appeared out of nowhere. As soon as they appeared, they stood far away in front of the treasured vessel, and they set up a formation while numerous divine senses covered the heavens and the earth as they swept over. Chapter 2679. A group of 6 or 7 people. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man in feathered clothes who stood on a crimson-colored, auspicious cloud. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and his entire body was coiled with strands of ancestral realm laws that seemed capable of seizing the soul. The people around him also gave off the aura of the progenitor realm. Whoosh! Nieching Rong's figure appeared immediately. When she saw this scene, her beautiful face couldn't help but turn cold. Yuan Wanzhong, what does your Ice Advent Institution intend to do? Nieching Rong said coldly. The treasured ship stopped, and the surrounding void became austere. The atmosphere also became extremely oppressive. Of course it's for that secret map, the leader said with a smile. His eyes unscrupulously sized up Nieching Rong's proud and graceful figure. His eyes were filled with passion. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to invite Palace Lord Nie to my humble abode as a guest. I just don't know if Palace Lord Nie will give me the honor. Nieching Rong's eyes were suffused with detest as she said, I don't know anything about the secret map you speak of. Besides that, aren't you afraid of completely offending my Yin Yang Academy by bringing so many people here? Since I dared to come, do you think that we would be afraid of offending the Heaven and Earth Academy? The winged man revealed a playful expression. Palace Master Nie, there isn't much time left. I'll give you a choice. Will you obediently follow me, or will let us take you away together? Everyone around him stared coldly at Nieching Rong. Nieching Rong's heart sank as she realized the severity of the problem. The actions of the enemy this time were obviously premeditated. Moreover, the enemy didn't mind breaking off relations with the Yin Yang Academy. Fellow Taoist, they're coming for me. You should leave with little Shi later. She quickly sent a voice transmission. I'll do my best to restrain them and fight for a chance of survival for all of you. Not worth it. But Lin Sun shook his head and refused. Nieching Rong froze. Before she could react, Lin Sun said indifferently, if you don't disappear in 3 breaths, you can all stay here. The middle-aged man, Yuan Wanchong, and others were all stunned. Then they looked at Lin Sun with surprise, and suspicion in their eyes. Who is this guy? How arrogant. Taoist brother, they're from the Ice Advent Institution. If you get involved, then it'll be equivalent to becoming enemies with the Ice Advent Institution, and it's even more not worth it. Seeing Lin Sun step forward bravely, Nieching Rong was very surprised, but she could not help but bitterly remind him that she did not dare to use this kind of thing to trick him. Lin Sun suddenly said, I heard that one of the Eternal Emperor clans standing behind the Ice Advent Academy is the One Clan? Nieching Rong nodded. Yes. She thought that Lin Sun had realized the danger and intended to withdraw. Unexpectedly, the next moment, Lin Sun laughed and said, Then I have to get involved in this matter. Yuan Wanchong and the others were stunned. Lin Sun's words were casual and plain, but in their ears, his tone was not ordinary. You're so young, yet you talk so big. I'd like to see if you really have the confidence to say such words. Killing intent flashed in Yuan Wanzhong's eyes. Boom! On his body, a strand of dazzling crimson-red sword insight surged into appearance. Lava surged while sword insight soared through the sky, and a terrifying aura of the universe enlightened ancestral realm surged, causing this expanse of the sky to seem as if it was burning. Slash! His words were like spring thunder. The crimson sword insight suddenly slashed down furiously, and the surging flames incinerated the void. 3 breaths. In a cold and indifferent voice, Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and the terrifying fiery red sword insight was instantly crushed and blown away by the wind. At the same time, Lin Sun's figure disappeared into thin air. Oh no! Yuan Wanzhong's expression changed abruptly, and he immediately urged his cultivation. Buzz! A golden copper bell appeared and protected his figure within it. Tens of thousands of mysterious Taoist markings appeared on the copper bell, and it glowed brightly. Divine Imperial Tao Bell. This was Yuan Wanzhong's life emperor treasure that had been nurtured in his body for thousands of years. Once it was used, it was like a natural barrier that blocked in front of him, and its defense was unparalleled. Lin Sun's figure appeared strangely in front of Yuan Wanzhong, and he stretched out his slender white hand and patted lightly. Clang! An earth-shaking collision sound resounded, and the golden copper bell was forcefully slapped into a collapsed palm print. Countless shocking cracks appeared around the copper bell. Then, boom! The life emperor-grade secret treasure that Yuan Wan regarded as the heavenly chasm barrier directly exploded, turning into countless fragments that scattered everywhere. Under the impact, Yuan Wanzhong's body seemed to be slapped by the hand of God, and a defensive power covering his whole body shattered layer by layer. In the end, his body exploded, blood splashed, and minced flesh flew. As soon as his spirit escaped, it was drowned by the terrible palm wind, like a candle blown out in the wind, and vanished in a puff of smoke. Just one palm. He killed an emperor ancestor from the Ice Advent School. It was a simple attack, but it had displayed a shocking and bloody scene of death, causing a brief deathly silence to appear in the world. Then, exclamations sounded everywhere. Those emperor ancestors who followed Yuan Wanzhong all felt as if they were struck by lightning. All of them were scared out of their wits, and their scalps were numb. They chose to escape at the first time. To be able to achieve what they had today, these emperor ancestors had experienced countless dangers in their lives. How could they not know that the young man beside Nie Qingrong was absolutely a peerless, ruthless person? However, it was obviously too late for them to escape at this time. Go! Lin Sun flicked repeatedly with his finger, and clanging sword howls resounded. Strand after strand of dazzling and resplendent sword qi surged into appearance, and then they were like numerous rays of light that slashed towards different directions. Pooh! 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 Those emperor ancestors from the Ice Advent School were killed one after another, causing blood to spray into the air. All of them were killed with a single strike, and their bodies and souls were obliterated. The sword qi was too terrifying. Dao techniques and treasures were completely useless, and they were utterly unable to resist the might of the sword qi. It caused Nie Qingrong to gasp without end and be stunned on the spot. In merely the blink of an eye, blood suffused the air beneath the sky while raging sword qi coiled around it. All the Emperor Ancestor Realm existences, including Yuan Wanzhong, had perished. This terrifying scene caused Nie Qingrong's snow-white skin to be covered in a layer of goosebumps, and her entire body trembled slightly. A year ago, she had already sensed that Lin Sun was an extremely dangerous existence. This was also the reason why she respected and revered Lin Sun so much. But when she saw Lin Sun attack, she realized that she had still far underestimated him. The latter's combat power was so terrifying that it had long exceeded the scope of the ordinary Emperor Ancestor realm. There was only one possibility: the opponent was a Juetian emperor ancestor. All of a sudden, the way she looked at Lin Sun changed. Juetian emperor ancestor. Not to mention in the first heaven, even in the sixth heaven, he was an extremely rare existence. In the past, as long as such a character emerged, he would inevitably be fought over by the major forces of the seventh heaven. And there was even a great chance that he would be chosen by the immortal giants of the eighth heaven. Nie Qingrong didn't expect that in a remote place like the Cloud Shadow Village, she would actually encounter such a legendary heaven-defying character. This was too incredible. At this time, Lin Sun seemed to have done a very insignificant thing. After returning to the treasure ship, he picked up the wine gourd and drank for a while, then said, "Fellow Taoist, shouldn't we continue our journey?" Nie Qingrong seemed to wake up from a dream, and a moan came out from her moist red lips. Her slightly dazed, beautiful eyes were filled with a sense of sobriety, and she said with embarrassment, "I've let fellow Taoists see a joke. Let's set off now." After saying that, as if to calm the shock in her heart, she raised her hand and patted her chest. Her towering snow-white breast trembled for a while, causing Lin Sun's vision to be impacted. Fortunately, Nie Qingrong didn't notice how seductive her action was. She turned around and hurriedly walked into the cabin. This woman, I'm afraid she's also born with a natural charm. Ordinary cultivators who see her will probably lose their mind. Lin Sun's eyes quickly became clear. Since he started cultivating until now, he had seen all kinds of beauties, and there was no lack of exceptional beauties that could compare to Nie Qingrong. He wouldn't be like a virgin who was instantly blinded by lust. In the following time, Lin Sun continued to stand at the bow of the ship, leisurely reading the classics of the world while drinking wine. In the cabin, Nie Qingrong was still with Xiao Shi, but she seemed to be absent-minded. Occasionally, she would bite her red lips and be lost in thought. The bloody scene from before still appeared in her mind from time to time, causing her Tao heart to ripple and unable to calm down. Juetian Emperor ancestor. Who exactly is he? Time passed day after day. Apart from cultivating, Lin Sun also taught Xiao Shi how to cultivate. Although he was hurrying along, he didn't feel bored. Fellow Taoist, may I ask, what role does the Zhu family play among the three great immortal emperor clans that stand behind the Yin-Yang Academy? On this day, Lin Sun suddenly found Nie Qingrong and asked. Although Nie Qingrong felt that it was strange, she still replied seriously, actually, the Yin-Yang Academy is divided into three great factions. One faction is led by the current palace master and stands in the Zhu family's camp. The other faction is led by Vice Palace Master Lung Qingxue and belongs to the Hong family's camp. The last faction is led by me and belongs to the He family's camp. This situation has actually lasted for less than 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, the previous palace master of the Yin-Yang Academy, Nian Yunjing, originally belonged to the He family's camp. However, in the conflict between the factions, Nian Yunjing was defeated by the current palace master and left dejectedly, becoming a vice palace master with a title but no power. Actually, Vice Palace Master Lung Qingxue and I are extremely dissatisfied with this outcome as well. Because even though the current Palace Master's combat strength is formidable, his disposition is cold and unkind. Since he became the Palace Master until now, the reputation and strength of the Yin-Yang Academy has been greatly inferior to before. But there's nothing we can do. The current Palace Master has the support of a noble from the Zhu family. No matter how dissatisfied we are, we can only endure it for now. As she finished speaking, Nie Qingrong couldn't help but sigh faintly, and a sense of loss arose on her face. She spoke very casually and simply, but Lin Sun was able to discern that the internal strife between the three great factions of the Yin-Yang Academy was probably far more intense than he'd imagined. That's good. Lin Sun rubbed his chin and seemed to be lost in thought. Chapter 2680. That was for the best. Nie Qingrong couldn't help but be stunned. Her beautiful eyes revealed a complicated expression. Lin Sun knew at a glance that Zhu family had misunderstood. He smiled and said, "To tell you the truth, I have enmity with the Zhu family. If you want to take over the Yin-Yang Academy, I don't mind helping you. So that's how it is. Nieching Rong understood and was immediately shocked. He had enmity with the Zhu family. The Zhu family is a behemoth in the sixth heaven. In the first heaven, ordinary people are not qualified to offend the Zhu family. What shocked Nieching Rong even more was that Lin Sun offered to help her obtain the position of Palace Lord. This was completely beyond her imagination. A moment later, Nieching Rong spoke in a low voice. "Dao brother, may I ask, who exactly are you? You should have guessed something in your mind, right?" Lin Sun's eyes were subtle. Nieching Rong looked as if she was struck by lightning. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Lin Sun with her beautiful eyes. She stammered, "Dao brother, could it be?" As Lin Sun nodded, "My surname is Lin." Hiss. Nieching Rong sucked in a breath of cold air. The full peaks on her body looked like they were about to burst out of her thin clothes. It was extremely shocking. "I definitely won't leak a single word about this." After a long time, Nieching Rong finally calmed down a bit. As if she was making an oath, she solemnly promised. Lin Sun smiled and said meaningfully, "Since I dare to let you know, I'm not afraid of you leaking it. You can think about what I said before. You don't have to rush to answer me." Nieching Rong nodded. At this moment, she suddenly felt an indescribable panic. Lin's proposal was like an irresistible temptation, teasing her mind that had been enduring for nearly 1,000 years. If I can replace the palace master, not only will I get more cultivation resources, but I will also be valued by the He family. At that time, maybe I can fight for a position in the second heaven's 9 mystical academy. Nieching Rong was an emperor ancestor and had reached Dao a long time ago. However, with the cultivation resources she possessed, even if she endured for countless years, it would not be enough for her to obtain a chance to prove her Dao. The reason was that the threshold of the eternal path towards the Dao was truly too high, and it was high to the point that even an imperial ancestor like her was unable to come into contact with it. However, if he could change his situation and become the palace master of the Yin-Yang Academy, as long as he works hard for thousands of years, he will be rewarded by the He family, and it is very likely that he will be sent to the second heaven. In fact, if they perform well and get the attention of the He family, they might even be able to enter the sixth heaven to cultivate. At that time, there would be great hope for him to seek the eternal path towards the Tao. Yes, hope. For the emperor ancestor of the first heaven, even if there is a glimmer of hope, it is enough for them to fight desperately for it. Nieching Rong was no exception, but she also knew that if she agreed to help Lin Sun, she would probably bear unpredictable risks. Because he was Lin Sun, he was a person who defied the laws of heaven and was infamous in all of eternal true world. At that moment, the people of the world even believed that Lin Sun, who came from the ancient path of stars, was the most wanted criminal in eternal true world, since he was viewed as an enemy by the terrifying forces of power from the 6th, 7th, and 8th great heaven regions. How could one not bear the risk of getting involved with such a person? Nieching Rong's expression flickered. Her heart was in a complete mess. She was tempted by Lin Sun's suggestion, but she was also afraid of the invisible danger she would face. Half a month after leaving Green Willow City, Lin Sun and the others finally arrived at the Yin and Yang Academy. Mountains stood tall, auspicious clouds curled up, and a dense rain of chaotic light danced in the sky. Under the illumination of the sky, it glowed with a beautiful and hazy divine luster. Row after row of ancient buildings were scattered all over the place like the stars in the sky, and they adorned the verdant and beautiful mountains. When looked at from afar, it was like an otherworldly paradise. This was the place where the number one force in Donglai region, the Yin and Yang Academy, was located, Shinta Mountain Range, a blessed land that could be considered a first-class mountain even in the first heaven. Just by looking at it from afar, Lin Sun judged that this place was extremely suitable for cultivation. If he had cultivated here 3 years ago, his injuries would have healed long ago. It should be known that with his current cultivation level, a normal blessed land could not meet his cultivation needs. This was because his cultivation level was too high. According to the records in the classic of all realms, if it was not necessary, no immortal level powerhouse would be willing to stay in the first heaven for a long time. The reason was that the rules of heaven and earth in this world, as well as the blessed land, could not support the cultivation needs of immortal level powerhouses. For example, this Shinta mountain range might be able to satisfy a supreme emperor ancestor like Lin Sun, but if an immortal were to cultivate here in less than 3 to 5 years, all the chaotic spiritual energy produced in the entire mountain range would be sucked dry. For example, in Cloud Shadow Village, Lin Sun's daily cultivation almost completely relied on the power of the eternal void source crystal, and every day he would consume hundreds of thousands of eternal void source crystals. Of course, compared to the vast thousand domains, the density of spiritual energy in the Cloud Shadow Village was comparable to that of the primordial world on the Starry Sky Ancient Path. And this Shinta mountain range was even more abundant than a land occupied by the 6 great Tao courts. Dao brother, Sister Xiaoxi, please follow me. Nie Qingrong led the way into the Shintu mountain range. All along the way, they saw verdant mountains, waterfalls, flowing springs, towering ancient trees, clusters of divine herbs, and precious beasts moving about leisurely. Moreover, waves of the sound of scriptures being chanted frequently resounded from the ancient buildings, and it added a tranquil feeling to the surroundings. The Shinta mountain range was huge, and its peaks were like halberds, rising into the sky. Each peak had its own unique characteristics. According to Nie Qingrong's guidance, the Yin-Yang Academy had a total of 36 peaks and 108 ancient buildings. Near each peak, there were folded worlds, secret realms, and heavenly grottos. These were treasured lands, specially for Emperor Realm powerhouses to cultivate. The disciples of the Yin-Yang Academy were divided into 4 types: outer sect, inner sect, true disciples, and closed sect. Among them, the outer sect disciples were the most numerous, while the closed sect disciples were the least. However, the total number of disciples was over 10,000. In the Yin-Yang Academy, other than the Palace Master, there were 4 Vice Palace Masters, 36 Peak Lords, and over 100 elders in attendance. In terms of scale, it was stronger than any of the 6 great Tao courts of the prehistoric world. Along the way, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This was only a great power in the first heaven. If it was in the 6th heaven, what would it be like? What about the 7th and 8th heaven? They would probably be different, right? This was the eternal world. It was no wonder that it was the supreme holy land in the eyes of the cultivators of the countless universes in the boundless universe. Along the way, Lin Sun and the others encountered many disciples of the Yin-Yang Academy. Whenever they saw Nie Qingrong, they would bow respectfully as if they were looking at a god. Dinsong Peak. The mountain was like a coiled dragon that rose into the sky. A sea of clouds rose from the peak of the mountain, and there were numerous ancient buildings in the shape of a fan. This was the place where Nie Qingrong resided and cultivated. My lord, you finally returned. Vice Palace Master Lung Qingxue has been waiting here for a few days. As soon as they arrived at Dinsong Peak, an attendant with rosy lips and white teeth greeted them happily. As he spoke, he sized up Lin Sun and little Shi curiously. Nie Qingrong was surprised and couldn't help but hesitate. If you have something to do, you can let this attendant entertain us first, Lin Sun said casually. Fellow Taoist, I'm really sorry. Nie Qingrong apologized and then instructed, Qing Yun, come and receive these 2 esteemed guests. Remember to treat them with the highest standards. Don't neglect them in the slightest. If anything goes wrong, I'll hold you responsible. The attendant called Qing Yun hurriedly nodded and walked forward, leading Lin Sun and little Shi to a building halfway up the mountain. Nie Qingrong went straight to the peak. Elder sister, you finally returned. In the sea of clouds on the mountain peak, when they saw Nie Qingrong, a beautiful figure stood up from under an ancient tree and immediately greeted her. It was a woman dressed in clothes that were whiter than snow. Her temperament was as cold as ice, and her appearance was that of a 16-year-old girl. She was extremely beautiful and outstanding. Her black hair was tied up with a golden ribbon, and her black eyebrows were as black as ink. Her cherry lips were pink and moist, and her eyes were as bright as stars. She was like an otherworldly fairy, exuding a quiet and cold temperament. This was Lung Qingxue, one of the 4 vice palace lords of the Yin-Yang Academy. Don't be fooled by her flawless beauty. She was actually an emperor ancestor with a shocking foundation and talent. Qingxue, you're waiting here. Did something happen while I was gone? Nie Qingrong asked. Worry arose in Lung Qingxue's starry eyes as she said, Exactly. Just 7 days ago, the palace master suddenly made a move and suppressed the vice palace master, Nian Yunjing. Later on, I found out that the palace master received a letter from the Ice Descent Academy that day. I suspect that it's extremely likely that this matter is related to the Ice Descent Academy. The most worrying thing is that no one knows if the vice palace master, Nian Yunjing, is dead or alive. Nie Qingrong's beautiful eyes focused as she said, What about Yong Faidu? What's his reaction? Yong Faidu was the other vice palace lord. Him? Lung Qingxue's eyes were filled with disgust as she said, An ungrateful person. He's just a lowly person who fawns on the rich and powerful. Now that he has the backing of Palace Lord, why would he care about Nian Yunjing's life? Speaking of which, he's Lord Nian Yunjing's last disciple. Now that his master has been suppressed, he's actually not worried at all? Nie Qingrong's brows were filled with gloom. Lung Qingxue said, Sister, what do you think we should do? Since Palace Lord dared to make a move against Lord Nian Yunjing, he definitely won't let us off. Moreover, there are many people coveting our position in the Yin-Yang Academy now. Once Palace Lord shows his intention to deal with us, there will definitely be many people who will jump out and fight to add insult to injury. Nie Qingrong frowned as she couldn't help but recall what Lin Sun had said on the way back. If you want to take over the Yin-Yang Academy, I don't mind helping you. For a time, her Dao heart became restless again. Nian Yunjing's encounter made her realize that if she didn't make a decision, the first one to suffer would probably be her. P.S. On the first day of the month, I'm asking for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Also, it's going to break out tomorrow. There will be at least 5 chapters, and there will be 2 chapters at noon tomorrow. Chapter 2681. After a long time, Nie Qingrong looked at Lung Qingxue and said, Qingxue, do you know what I encountered on my way back? Lung Qingxue was stunned. In the next moment, Nie Qingrong told her about being obstructed by Yuan Wanzhong and the others from the Ice Advent Academy. Lung Qingxue's pretty face changed slightly, and she said, It's related to the Ice Advent Academy again. Nie Qingrong said, Only the upper echelons of our Black-White Academy know about my return route, but I encountered such an obstruction on the way. This is too abnormal. You suspect that this matter was leaked to the Ice Advent Academy by the Palace Master? A cold light suffused Lung Qingxue's starry eyes. Nie Qingrong had calmed down at this moment and said, It's hard to say now, but if we can confirm that Lord Nian Yunjing's persecution is related to the letter from the Ice Advent Academy, then I have reason to suspect that the matter of my whereabouts being leaked is very likely related to the Palace Master. What exactly does he want to do? Lung Qingxue's picturesque, beautiful face flickered indeterminately, and she said after a while, Big sister, behind the Black-White Academy stands the He family and the Hong family. Now that such a serious matter has happened, should we contact these 2 great powers? Distant water can't put out a nearby fire. Nie Qingrong sighed softly. Inspector heavenly ambassadors from these 2 great powers only appear once every 3 years. Even if we want to take the initiative to contact them, it's impossible to wait for the inspector heavenly ambassadors to appear in a short period of time. Why don't we take this opportunity to leave the Black-White Academy immediately and lie low for now? We'll wait for the inspector heavenly ambassadors to arrive before reporting the matter truthfully? Lung Qingxue asked. Nie Qingrong shook her head and said, No, Lord Nian Yunjing's fate is unknown. How can we ignore it? Then, big sister, what do you think we should do? Lung Qingxue was at a loss for a moment. Nie Qingrong's heart was suffused with pity. In the Black-White Academy, Lung Qingxue was a very special existence. She had an excellent physique and a temperament like water. She seemed to be an imperial ancestor with a strong foundation, but she had been obsessed with cultivation all these years and didn't understand the affairs of the world. In Ye Qingrong's heart, Lung Qingxue was like a spotless mirror. It was obviously too difficult for her to deal with those dangerous and unfathomable matters. My lord, the two honored guests have been properly arranged. In the distance, Tong Qingyun's figure appeared and said in a clear voice. Nie Qingrong nodded. You can leave first. When Qingyun's figure disappeared, Lung Qingxue couldn't help but ask curiously, Sister, you brought a friend back this time? Nie Qingrong was silent for a moment, then said, Qingxue, didn't you ask me what to do now? I've decided that this time, I'll make you Qianheng pay the price for his evil deeds. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Yu Qianheng, he was the current palace lord of the Heaven and Earth Academy. Sister, what do you think we should do? Lung Qingxue's eyes were bright. There was no fear or worry. Didn't you ask me about those two esteemed guests just now? If one of them were to help us, killing Yu Qianheng would be as easy as flipping one's hand. When Ye Qingrong recalled the scene of Lin Sun killing Yuan Wanzhong and the others, her heart felt hot and trembled. Sister, I want to meet the guest you mentioned. I want to see if he is as powerful as you said, Lung Qingxue said, her eyes filled with curiosity. Don't. Ye Qingrong hurriedly stopped her. Qingxue, he is an extraordinary and terrifying person. Let me handle this matter. She was worried that with Lung Qingxue's temper, if she accidentally angered Lin Sun, it wouldn't be worth it. But the more Nye Qingrong acted like this, the more curious Lung Qingxue became. She said, Can I just watch from afar? Nye Qingrong hesitated for a moment, but still agreed. Remember, only watch from afar. Don't make any probing movements. Lung Qingxue agreed readily. Halfway up the mountain, in a courtyard with a small bridge and flowing water, old trees were rooted, and exotic flowers and grasses were competing with each other in beauty. A group of snow-white divine cranes danced on the emerald-green lake, emitting a series of clear cries. Lin Sun casually sat on a blue stone by the lake with a wine gourd beside him. He held a jade-green bamboo rod in his hand as he fished leisurely. Waves of refreshing lake breeze mixed with dense, spiritual energy blew over, making one feel relaxed and happy. Little she was playing around. This was the first time she came to the Heaven and Earth Academy. To her, everything was filled with novelty. She was both nervous and longing. Splash, the lake water splashed, and a large green fish with great intelligence took the bait. It was fished up by Lin Sun's bamboo rod and struggled in the void. Tisk, it's about to develop intelligence. Forget it, I'll spare you this time. Lin Sun shook his wrist, and a large green fish regained its freedom. It jumped into the lake. Daoist brother, you're in a good mood. Nye Qingrong's beautiful figure walked over from afar. Her plump lips bloomed into an intoxicating smile. Lin Sun didn't get up and said casually, in the path of cultivation, there's tension and relaxation. It's not bad to relax once in a while. A gourd of wine, a rod. How many people in the world are like this? Nye Qingrong's voice was gentle, and she smiled sweetly. She stood at the side. Her figure was extremely tall, and her legs were slender, plump, and straight. The lake breeze blew over, causing her clothes to flutter and vividly outline her impressive figure. Lin Sun smiled, took a sip from the wine gourd, and said, You've already made your decision? Nye Qingrong nodded and told him everything that had happened to Nian Yunjing. In the end, she said, Taoist brother, I'm really at my wit's end. I can only shamelessly ask for your help. Lin Sun grunted. His eyes were clear as he looked at the fishing rod. He said, You don't have to feel too much pressure. If anything happens, you can push all the blame to me. This way, the Yinyang Academy won't be affected. Even if the Zhu family sends people here, they won't come looking for you. Nye Qingrong suddenly felt an indescribable warmth in her heart. She said, Taoist brother, I'm already very grateful that you agreed to help me. How can I let you bear all the consequences? Lin Sun smiled and said, I'm doing this to let little she cultivate in the Yinyang Academy with peace of mind. Just do as I say. I only have one request. Don't reveal my identity. I'd like to see if the Zhu family will send some clansmen to take revenge after I take down Yu Qianheng. Nie Qingrong suddenly realized something and said, Taoist brother, are you going to fight with the Zhu family? Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, You can say that. Anyway, he was bored. It was impossible for him to go to the sixth heaven immediately. However, if he could lure his enemies to the first heaven, it would be different. At least in the first heaven, he could attack or retreat. Even if he was targeted by an immortal, he could just slip away. Who is she? Lin Sun suddenly asked. He had already noticed that there was a snow-white figure standing far away. Her appearance was picturesque and extremely beautiful. Nie Qingrong was stunned for a moment before she understood. She said in a low voice, Lung Qingxue. She's a vice palace master like me. She's also curious. That's why she followed you. Lin Sun shook his head and continued to focus on fishing. Seeing this, Nie Qingrong tactfully said goodbye and left. Before leaving, she also brought Lung Qingxue, who had been standing far away. Sister, is he the terrifying existence you mentioned? On the way, Lung Qingxue couldn't help but ask. But in my opinion, there's nothing special about him. That's called hiding his strength. If he could be seen through by you at a glance, would he still be called a master? Nie Qingrong chuckled. Lung Qingxue said thoughtfully, That's right, but sister, do you really think he could defeat Yu Qianheng? After all, our Yin-Yang Academy is covered in the energy of order as well. Even though it's merely at the 3rd grade of the Earth rank, it's always been controlled by the Palace Master. Under such circumstances, it's practically impossible to defeat him. Nie Qingrong said, You've really cultivated too much. Even if you want to make a move, it won't be in the Yin-Yang Academy. Yu Qianheng controls the power of order and has an absolute geographical advantage. We must think of a way to lure him out of the Yin-Yang Academy. At that time, without the help of the power of order, he definitely won't be the opponent of that fellow. Lung Qingxue held Nie Qingrong's arm and rested her head on her shoulder. She smiled lightly. Anyway, with sister here, I don't have to worry about so many things. At this moment, Nie Qingrong was in a good mood. She held Lung Qingxue's slender waist with one hand and suddenly grabbed Lung Qingxue's chest with the other. Lung Qingxue was shocked and dodged with a shudder. Her cold and beautiful fair face was suffused with a blush that was like the glow of fire, and she stammered. Big sister, what are you doing? Nie Qingrong smiled to the point that her red phoenix eyes narrowed, and she said, I'm just curious why your body is so flat. So it's because you're wearing a doo-doo. As she spoke, she used her slender fingers to draw a perfectly round arc in the air, and she bit her rosy lips as she giggled. I didn't expect it to be so much bigger than I expected. It's almost as big as mine. Sister, you're really hiding your strength. Hearing these teasing words, Lung Qingxue's sparkling and translucent face became completely red as if it was burning. Her entire body seemed to have suffered an impact, and she was at a loss for what to do. Nie Qingrong couldn't help but chuckle. Lung Qingxue had always been like an otherworldly fairy, sober and indifferent. It was rare for her to have such an embarrassed and delicate appearance. Of course, it was also very interesting. She didn't know that although she had already left the place where Lin Sun was staying, this scene was still silently captured by Lin Sun's enormous and terrifying divine sense. While he was fishing, his fingers slightly stiffened and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. This Nie Qingrong was already a dignified emperor ancestor. How could she still be so mischievous? At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. Lung Qingxue looked at the thin figure. Could it be that she was really hiding her strength, like Nie Qingrong said? Immediately after, Lin Sun shook his head and laughed involuntarily. At this moment, an elegant and handsome figure flashed over from the distant sky. He floated in front of Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue and said with a smile, You too, the palace master invites you. Chapter 2682. The palace lord invited him over? Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue looked at each other. They felt that something was amiss. Yong Faidu, let me ask you, is your master Nian Yunjing dead or alive? Nie Qingrong's eyes were cold. The elegant man was one of the vice palace lords of the Yin Academy, Yong Faidu. He couldn't help but smile. Why don't you ask the palace lord later? His eyes glanced at Nie Qingrong's graceful and proud figure, and a wave of heat rose in his heart. Logically speaking, with his current realm, he could have gotten rid of his desires long ago. However, he couldn't control his crazy desire when facing Nie Qingrong. For an existence like him, he'd long since become accustomed to seeing peerless beauties in the world, but only beauties of the same realm as him could truly enter his discerning eyes. Disregarding everything else, just Nie Qingrong's progenitor realm cultivation was enough to make him want to conquer her. Moreover, she was an absolute beauty. This only solidified some of Yong Faidu's thoughts. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to have such delusions. But now, things were different. Although Yong Faidu's gaze didn't leave a trace, Nie Qingrong still caught it. She felt an indescribable sense of disgust. Lord Nian Yunjing is your master, yet you don't care about him. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Yong Faidu smiled nonchalantly. I don't care about retribution. The palace lord is still waiting in the Yin-Yang Hall. Shouldn't the two of you leave now? Sister, Lung Qingxue wanted to say something. Nie Qingrong cut her off. Qingxue, since the palace lord invited us, let's go see him and ask about Lord Nian Yunjing. Lung Qingxue nodded. Yong Faidu smiled and gestured for them to enter. Please. Yin-Yang Hall. Yu Qianheng sat alone on the main seat in the center. He was examining an old and tattered secret map. He had a tall figure and long hair. His face was as handsome as a young man's. Even though he was sitting casually, he gave off an oppressive aura. Palace Lord, the two vice palace lords are here. Yong Faidu's voice resounded from outside the hall. Following that, Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue entered the hall. On the central seat, Yu Qianheng put away the secret map in his hand and raised his head to look over. His eyes were cold and indifferent as he said, I've only invited the two of you here for one thing. Nie Qingrong's expression was cold and calm as she said, Before we talk, can I ask Palace Master if Master Nian Yunjing is dead or alive? Yu Qianheng frowned and said unhappily, Why are you mentioning this old geezer? But since you asked, I'll tell you that he's already dead. Dead? Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue were both shocked. Their expressions changed slightly. This grievous news caught them off guard, and they were unable to accept it. I obtained news that he's secretly colluding with the members of Ice Descent Academy, with the intention of harming me. What's the point of keeping such an old thief that harbors malicious intent? Yu Qianheng's voice was indifferent. How can you do this? Lung Qingxue was furious. Her clear eyes were filled with coldness. As the palace master, it's my duty to eliminate traitors for the Heaven and Earth Academy. It's not up to a vice palace master like you to question me. Yu Qianheng scoffed. Nie Qingrong calmed herself down and signaled Lung Qingxue not to act rashly. She then said, Then why did the palace master summon the two of us here? Yu Qianheng knocked on the back of the chair and looked at Yong Faidu, who was standing at the side of the hall. You speak. Yes. Yong Faidu immediately stood up and looked at Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue with a smile. The palace master has decided to replace the vice palace masters. In other words, the two of you will no longer be vice palace masters from today onwards. Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue's hearts sank. Yong Faidu continued. However, the palace master can give the two of you a chance on account of our past relationship. As long as the two of you choose to pledge allegiance to the palace master, the two of you will still have a place in the Heaven and Earth Academy in the future. Nie Qingrong was so angry that she laughed. What if we don't agree? Yong Faidu no longer concealed his burning desire to possess her. He stared at Nie Qingrong unscrupulously. Then, that old bastard Nian Yunjing is a good example for all of you. Of course, if all of you are suppressed, I'll still plead for leniency with the palace master. After all, it's extremely difficult for delicate beauties like all of you to attain the Tao and become ancestors. If you're killed, then it would truly be too painful. You are courting death. Lung Qing Shui's eyes were filled with a bone-chilling coldness. Her beautiful face was filled with killing intent. Nie Qing Rong said, "Aren't you worried that the He family and Hong family will find out about this and punish you?" Behind the Heaven and Earth Academy stood the Zhu, Hong, and He immortal emperor clans. They kept each other in check. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to become enemies with them. However, Yong Faidu couldn't help but sneer. "I forgot to tell you, not long ago, the Zhu family obtained a heavenly order energy from a forbidden secret realm. It won't be long before they move from the 6th heaven to the 7th heaven. Do you think that under such circumstances, the He family and Hong family will become enemies with the Zhu family just because of the two of you?" Nie Qing Rong's expression changed. She finally understood why Yu Qianheng and Yong Faidu were so fearless. It was because the Zhu family was no longer the same as before. "Sister, I would rather die than submit," Lung Qing Shui said word by word. "You don't know what's good for you." Yong Faidu snorted coldly. "In the past, you had Nian Yunjing, that old crook, protecting you, which allowed you to cultivate wholeheartedly and ignore the disputes of the world. But now, that old crook Nian Yunjing is dead. Even if you want to die, you can't. You must submit. Who do you think you are? If Qing Shui and I fight to the death, do you believe that even Yu Qianheng won't be able to save you?" Nie Qing Rong's eyes were cold. Her words caused Yong Faidu's expression to change. "Have the two of you considered doing this?" Nie Qing Rong ignored him and looked at Yu Qianheng. "So, if the two of us don't agree to this, we won't be able to leave this place today." Yu Qianheng sighed. "Why do the two of you have to do this? I really don't want the two of you to follow in Nian Yunjing's footsteps." Nie Qing Rong sneered. "One last question. Are you the one who leaked my whereabouts to the Ice Advent Academy?" Yu Qianheng's eyes narrowed. He said expressionlessly, "What a joke. As the palace master of the Yin Yang Academy, how could I do such a thing?" As he spoke, he suddenly stood up. Divine light surged in his eyes as he glanced at Nie Qing Rong and Lung Qing Shui. "I only have one question. Have the two of you made up your mind?" Nie Qing Rong and Lung Qing Shui looked at each other. Swoosh, swoosh. Almost immediately, the two of them turned around and disappeared into thin air, rushing out of the hall. "Do you think you can escape after entering this hall?" Yu Qianheng sneered. Boom! A terrifying light barrier of order suddenly appeared near the hall's entrance, blocking them like a natural moat. Nie Qing Rong and Lung Qing Shui's figures staggered out of the void. Their hearts instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. Originally, they were already prepared and vigilant. They planned to find an opportunity to lure Yu Qianheng out of the Yin Yang Academy. At that time, they could rely on Lin Sun's strength to deal with Yu Qianheng. Who would have thought that Yu Qianheng's killing intent would come so quickly? If they knew that they would be faced with such a situation, they definitely wouldn't have agreed to it. However, it was obviously too late to regret now. Ha ha! Nie Qing Rong, Lung Qing Shui. The two of you should obediently surrender. In this place, the palace master is the heavens. You can't struggle or resist. Yong Faidu laughed loudly in the distance. His eyes were filled with lust. He couldn't wait to capture Nie Qing Rong right now and conquer her. Kill this despicable and shameless thing first. Nie Qing Rong raised her hand, and a snow-white flying knife flew out and slashed at Yong Faidu. "Go!" Lung Qingshui's pink lips lightly spat out, and with a clang, a colorful flying shuttle shot out like a dazzling bolt of lightning, its murderous aura shocking the world. Yong Faidu laughed wantonly. He didn't resist at all and dodged far away. Boom! A terrifying green power of order emerged and transformed into a large net that was dazzling like a rain of light. The snow-white flying daggers and the dazzling flying shuttles instantly stopped in their tracks and were suppressed in the large net. They buzzed and wailed as they were unable to move. At the same time, Nie Qing Rong and Lung Qing Shui's figures were directly restrained by the green power of order. Even though they had the cultivation of a progenitor, they couldn't move a finger. The two of them couldn't help but reveal looks of despair. This was the power of order. Even if it was only at the third grade of the Earth rank, it wasn't something an emperor ancestor like them could resist. Yu Qianheng, who controlled the power of order, was like an overlord in the heavens. You too, you can't commit suicide even if you want to. Haha. Young Fida laughed without the slightest scruple. He stared straight at Nie Qinrong and licked his lips. Empress, please hand Nie Qinrong over to me. I guarantee that I will train her until she's completely obedient and obedient. She won't have any other thoughts. Nie Qinrong was so embarrassed that she wanted to die. Her phoenix eyes were spitting fire, but no matter how she struggled, it was useless. I'll hand them over to you. Remember, I want loyalty. Yu Qianheng's eyes were cold and emotionless. Young Fidu was overjoyed. I won't let you down. As he spoke, he couldn't help but walk toward Nie Qinrong. This peerless beauty was like a demon in his heart. Now that he could finally get his hands on her, it wasn't hard to imagine how excited he was. Beauties, I'll treat you well. As young Fidu spoke, he was about to take the imprisoned Nie Qinrong and Lung Qing Shui away. At that moment, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded outside the hall. Isn't it too early to be complacent? Young Fidu was stunned. Nie Qinrong and Lung Qing Shui, who were already filled with despair and anger, revealed looks of pleasant surprise. It's him. Yu Qianheng frowned. He looked outside the palace and said, "Which scoundrel dares to sneak into my heaven and earth academy?" Before he could finish speaking, a tall figure slowly walked in from outside the hall. He wore a moon-white robe and had a handsome face. It was Lin's son. P.S. Let's do 2 consecutive chapters first. Try to do another 2 consecutive chapters at around 6 in the evening. Chapter 2683. Lin Sun's appearance surprised Yu Qianheng and Young Fidu. He was too unfamiliar to them, and they couldn't recognize who this young man was. Out of an instinctive vigilance, they didn't make a move immediately. But Nie Qinrong suddenly thought of something, and her expression changed. Brother, run. This place is covered by the power of order. Want to leave? I'm afraid that's impossible. Yu Qianheng coldly said. I never expected that you, Nie Qinrong, would actually bring back a helper. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he is merely a fool who overestimates his capabilities. Otherwise, how would he dare to barge into this place? It's no different from courting death. Young Fidu concluded with a smile. After the initial shock, he was no longer afraid. What was this place? The core area of the Yinyang Academy was covered by the power of order. Not to mention ordinary people, even immortals would be beaten to a pulp if they barged in. However, Lin Sun didn't seem to feel it, and he didn't retreat or stop. He looked at the green power of order that filled the hall, and then looked at Nie Qinrong and Lung Qingshu. Don't worry. Since I've decided to help, it's just some power of order. It won't be a problem for me. Lin Sun smiled warmly. Those calm and indifferent words calmed the anxiety and uneasiness in Nie Qinrong and Yimo's hearts. Some power of order? Yu Qianheng almost thought he heard wrong. He laughed out loud. Nie Qinrong, where did you find such a weirdo? Palace Lord, it's better to kill this person as soon as possible. Young Fido was in a bad mood. He was about to subdue Nie Qinrong and Lung Qingshu, but someone had interfered. All right. As Yu Qianheng spoke, a jade seal with green light appeared between his fingers. Boom! The next moment, countless green power of order surged out like divine chains, shooting towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't dodge. He stood his ground and said in his mind, Wu Shuang, you can enjoy this food alone. Thank you, master. Amidst the crisp voice, the abyssal sword cauldron turned into a pattern and floated in Lin Sun's palm. In the depths of the sword cauldron, Nirvana, amidst the order, a young girl in white clothes who seemed to be 14 or 15 years old woke up from her slumber. She was young and elegant, like a pretty girl from a humble family who was waiting to be married. She was delicate and charming, and she glowed with an innocent aura. It was the spirit of order of the heavenly Tao of the origin world from the last era, Wushuang. Naturally, outsiders could not see all of this. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun reached out his hand. Boom! The green order energy that filled the sky was like a stream returning to its origin, firmly imprisoned. That strange and abnormal scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. How was this possible? Immediately afterward, the pattern of the sword cauldron in Lin Sun's palm began to circulate like a huge black hole, releasing a terrible, devouring aura. Streams of cyan power of order turned into flowing light and swept into it. In the blink of an eye, the third-level Earth rank power that covered the unparalleled hall was completely swallowed up, leaving nothing behind. This, Nieqing Rong and Lungqing Shui stood there in a daze. Their hearts were in turmoil. That was the power of order. But now it was swallowed up by Lin Sun's fingers. How could this be? Yu Qianheng cried out involuntarily, his face turning green. Since he started cultivating, this was the first time he had seen such an incredible thing, which made him directly confused. The hall was dead silent, and everyone's expression was extremely interesting. Master, is there more? Inside the abyssal sword cauldron, Wu Shuang asked timidly. She seemed to want more. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he said in his heart, "If you perform well in the future, I will help you collect more power of order." Speaking of which, not long ago, Lin Sun noticed that Wu Shuang had shown signs of awakening. It was as if she had been completely tamed by the Nirvana order. As if the order had been completely tamed when he used his divine sense to sense it, Wu Shuang revealed an expression of absolute submission. This change was not seen before. Unfortunately, although Wu Shuang had awakened, she was extremely weak. Moreover, she was the spirit of order and had no real wisdom. All her actions and words were deduced with the help of her own rules of order. According to the information Lin Sun sensed, even if Wu Shuang could recover, if he did not set foot on the immortal path, it would be impossible to use Wu Shuang's power to fight. Fortunately, in terms of fighting against the power of order, whether it was Wu Shuang or the Nirvana order, they could exert unexpected power. Order could unleash unimaginable power. At this time, Palace Lord, he must have a taboo item on him that can resist the power of order. Not far away, after the initial shock, Yong Faidu shouted to remind Lin Sun. "You talk too much nonsense." Lin Sun collected his thoughts, looked at Yong Faidu, and extended his hand. Boom! A large palm formed in the void, simple and powerful, and slapped towards Yong Faidu. Yong Faidu was also an emperor ancestor, so he could not just sit and wait for death. He immediately activated his own cultivation and used a secret technique to meet the palm head-on. Unfortunately, he did not understand how terrifying the young man in front of him was. Bang! Amidst the dull sound, he was sent flying, and his body was smashed into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere, and when he landed on the ground, he was already on the verge of death, unable to get up again. "I'll leave him to you." Lin Sun glanced at Nieqing Rong, then looked at Yu Qianheng in the distance, and said, "Are you going to surrender yourself, or do I have to do it? Who the hell are you?" Yu Qianheng was shocked and angry. The cyan jade seal in his hand was a secret treasure that controlled the power of order in the hall, but now it was broken into pieces. This also meant that from now on, he had lost his greatest support. "I'm the one asking you." Lin Sun smiled and suddenly reached out his hand. Whoosh! Yu Qianheng moved at once, trying to escape. But before he could move, he was grabbed by Lin Sun like a fly and could not move. He was shocked and said, "Aren't you afraid of the Zhu family's revenge?" Lin Sun's eyes were filled with pity. "To tell you the truth, I came because I know you're a lackey of the Zhu family." Yu Qianheng's eyes were filled with panic. Just as he was about to say something, he felt his vision go black, and he fainted. With a plop, he fell to the ground, unconscious. Seeing this, Lung Qingxue finally understood why Nieqing Rong repeatedly told her not to test Lin Sun. This was indeed an unimaginably powerful existence. "Do you need my help?" Lin Sun asked. Nieqing Rong, who had escaped from death, had regained her composure. Hearing this, she quickly said, "Don't trouble yourself. Qingxue and I can handle the rest." Lin Sun nodded, turned around, and left. When he disappeared, Lung Qingxue could not help but ask, "Sister, who is this Taoist brother of yours? Is he a Zhu Xian emperor ancestor?" Obviously, although Lung Qingxue was pure and simple, she was not stupid. She could tell at a glance that an ordinary emperor ancestor could not have the combat power like Lin Sun. "Qingxue, this person's background is not simple. But don't ask about this matter again." Nie Qingrong sighed with emotion and then smiled. "When the time is right, I will tell you the whole story." Lung Qingxue nodded. Bang! With a muffled sound, Yong Faidu's head was directly smashed by Nie Qingrong's palm. She seemed to have not vented her anger, and wisps of golden divine flame drifted from her fingertips, burning Yong Faidu's body completely, and he was completely turned into ashes. "This damn thing, he still wants to subdue me? Why doesn't he look at himself first?" Nie Qingrong's eyes were full of hatred and disdain. Then she walked towards Yu Qianheng. "Sister, if what Yu Qianheng said is true, then the current Zhu clan cannot be compared to before. If you kill him, I'm afraid the He clan will not be able to stand up for you." Lung Qingxue could not help but remind, "My silly sister, since it has already been done, there is no turning back. As for the Zhu clan, someone will deal with them." Then, Nie Qingrong waved her hand. Bang! The unconscious Yu Qianheng was engulfed by endless flames, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into ashes and scattered on the ground. Lung Qingxue looked at this scene in a daze and said, "Sister, what if the He clan also abandons you because of this? You also know that people like us seem to have limitless glory, but in the eyes of the immortal emperor clans, we are nothing more than chess pieces that could be abandoned at any time." Nie Qingrong's expression was complicated, and she said, "Sister, don't worry. That Taoist brother has already prepared for a rainy day and has already thought of a way to resolve all of this." Lin Sun had previously said that he wanted her to push all the responsibility onto him. Even if the Zhu clan sent people, Lin Sun would deal with it. This way, the He clan would not say anything. On the contrary, as she took control of the Yin Yang Academy, the more contributions she made, the easier it would be for the He clan to value her. However, Nie Qingrong always felt that she owed him a lot, and she did not know how to repay him. She even thought that even if she gave herself to him and made him her master, he might not agree. After all, he was a legendary existence. How could he be greedy for beauty? On this day, Nie Qingrong announced to the public that the previous Palace Lord Yu Qianheng and Vice Palace Lord Yong Faidu had been killed by enemies, and both of them had perished. From today onwards, she would take over the position of Palace Lord. For a time, the Yin Yang Academy was in an uproar, and countless disciples were alarmed. The 36 peak masters could not sit still, and they all went to the Yin Yang Great Hall to inquire. Among them, there was no lack of important figures who were loyal to Yu Qianheng. After confirming that this news was true, they all realized that there was no way to save the situation. No matter how loyal they were to Yu Qianheng, no one objected. Nie Qingrong had the He clan behind her, and Lung Qingxue had the Han clan behind her. Now that Yu Qianheng was gone, even if they wanted to object, they did not have the confidence to do so. A period of turmoil was unavoidable. After all, Vice Palace Lord Yunjing had been suppressed not long ago, and now even Palace Lord Yu Qianheng and Vice Palace Lord Yong Faidu had perished. Losing 3 great figures that were the pillars of the academy was no less than an extremely heavy blow to the entire Yin Yang Academy. Even the Yin Yang Academy's position in the first heaven would be greatly affected and impacted. Chapter 2684. Half a month later, after the initial turmoil and chaos, Nie Qingrong took complete control of the Palace Master of the Yin Yang Academy, and the situation gradually stabilized. It should be known that the Yin Yang Academy is the #1 force in the Donglai region. It seems that there are only tens of thousands of disciples, but the forces attached to the Yin Yang Academy are spread all over the Donglai region. For example, Hua Xingdu, the Lord of the Water Cloud Continent, is the best example. The first heaven may not be as good as the other heavens, but it is far from comparable to the other universes in the vast thousand battles domain. The reason why the Inyang Academy can become the #1 force in the Donglai region is because of the tributes it receives every year. Of course, the vast majority of this wealth will eventually be sent to the sixth heaven. In this half a month, Lin Sun lived a very leisurely life, either cultivating, fishing, or cooking food. He simply ignored what happened in the Inyang Academy. Occasionally, he would give little Shi some pointers, but most of the time, he was studying the ancient book, the classics of all worlds. Now, he was clear that there are two ways to enter the second heaven from the first heaven. One is to be guided by people from the upper world. For example, if Nie Qingrong wants to enter a higher heaven, she must rely on the power of the He family to guide her. The other is to break through the barriers. Between the first heaven and the second heaven, there are boundary barriers. These boundary barriers have different forms. Some are violent space-time turbulence, and those who enter will die. Some are broken areas of nothingness, and those who enter are very likely to get lost. To the cultivators of the world, the safest domain barrier was undoubtedly the domain star path that was distributed within the domain barrier. The so-called star path is a zigzag path between two major realms, decorated with countless star remains. Cultivators can only reach the end of the star path, which is where the second heaven is located, by following the star path. However, there is no shortage of dangers on the star path. There are many terrifying and strange creatures around the long and winding star path. Even if the Emperor Ancestor wants to break through the star path, it will be a narrow escape. Therefore, under normal circumstances, if one can be guided by people from the upper world, very few people will choose to break through the star path. For Lin Sun, this seems to be the most reliable way to go to the second heaven. In fact, he suspected that his eldest senior brother and the others had used this method to clear the trials when they arrived in Eternal True World, and in just a short 9 days, they had slaughtered their way to the sixth heaven. In the classic of all worlds, there is a star path leading to the second heaven, and it's extremely easy to find. It's right in the sky of the first heaven. Once my cultivation base recovers, I'll have to go take a look at what's above 90,000 feet. Lin Sun sat on the bank of the lake again. He hung the bamboo pole and picked up the wine gourd from time to time to drink leisurely. Fellow Taoist. In the distance, Nie Qingrong's figure gracefully walked over. Has everything been handled properly? Lin Sun asked. Yes. Nie Qingrong came to Lin Sun's side and looked at him with her beautiful eyes. She said gently, I came this time because I have a few things to discuss with you. Go ahead, said Lin Sun. Every 3 years, an inspector heavenly ambassador will descend from the upper realm, and there are less than 3 months left until the next 3 years, said Nie Qingrong. The so-called inspector heavenly ambassador was an emissary from the immortal emperor clan. Every 3 years, they will come from the sixth heaven. One is to collect tributes, and the other is to take away some of the most outstanding seedlings. It was not only in the Inyang Academy, but also in the other 3 academies of the first heaven. In other words, within 3 months, the inspector heavenly ambassador from the Zhu family will also come, asked Lin Sun. Nie Qingrong nodded. That's right. Lin Sun smiled. All right, then I'll wait to meet the inspector heavenly ambassador from the Zhu family. By the way, how are their cultivation bases? Nie Qingrong pondered. In the past, the inspector heavenly ambassador has always been an emperor ancestor from the immortal emperor clan. Occasionally, an immortal emperor would personally come, but the number of times is very few. Lin Sun had a rough idea in his heart. When the time comes, just let me know in advance. Nie Qingrong brought up the second matter. Fellow Taoist, do you still remember the assassination we encountered when we returned to the Inyang Academy? Of course Lin Sun remembered. At that time, Yuan Wanzhong said that he wanted to ask me for a secret map. I didn't understand at that time, but now I understand that it was for this item. With that said, Nie Qingrong flipped her palm, and an old and yellowed secret map scroll appeared. I found this among Yu Qianheng's belongings. It's very likely that it was left behind by an immortal Emperor Realm figure a long time ago. It records a mysterious, forbidden area, and it's very likely that there's order power within it. She handed the secret map scroll to Lin Sun. Fellow Taoist, you'll understand once you take a look. Lin Sun held it in his hand, and what he saw was a bloodstain as well as an aura of time. Opening the scroll, there was a map of mountains and rivers drawn on it. Apart from that, there were also the names of some mountains and lakes. Eternally Fallen Forbidden Area? Lin Sun was startled. This was a very strange and ominous name. Nieching Rong said, "According to my understanding of the First Heaven, the so-called Eternally Fallen Forbidden Area on this secret map is most likely located near the Withered Willow Mountain Range in Donglai region. The Withered Willow Mountain Range is extremely remote, desolate, and shrouded in filthy mist and miasma all year round. Since ancient times, very few creatures are willing to live near it." Lin Sun immediately recalled the records of the Withered Willow Mountain Range in the Classic of Ages. Comparing it with the secret map in his hand, he found that there were indeed many similarities between the two. If the Eternally Fallen Forbidden Area is really near the Withered Willow Mountain Range, and if there's order power within it, then the value of this secret map is absolutely immeasurable. Nieching Rong said, "I suspect that the Ice Arrival Academy already knows about this, but they don't know who has this secret map." Lin Sun nodded. "Speaking of which, the order power of the Yin Academy was destroyed by me, which means that you, the Palace Master, have lost your greatest trump card. When I have some free time, I will personally go to the Withered Willow Mountain Range to take a look. If there really is order power there, I can collect it and suppress it in the Black-White Academy." Nieching Rong couldn't help but be shocked. "Fellow Taoist, the order power is extremely precious and can be considered a supreme treasure. If you can obtain it, you can establish your own sect in the eternal true world. Even if you can't use it yourself, if you offer it to the Immortal Emperor clan, you will immediately become a guest of the Immortal Emperor clan and be able to cultivate in the sixth heaven. Do you think I care about this?" Lin Sun smiled. Nieching Rong let out a sigh. She recalled the earth-shattering rumors about Lin Sun and vaguely understood Lin Sun's mentality. Perhaps in her eyes, the order power was a priceless treasure, but in Lin Sun's eyes, it wasn't necessarily so. "Then I will leave this secret map in your care, fellow Taoist." Nieching Rong didn't try to persuade him anymore. "Also, does fellow Taoist need any other cultivation resources? Now that I control the Yin Academy, as long as I can help fellow Taoist, I definitely won't refuse." Lin Sun thought for a moment, then said, "How do you plan to arrange for little Shi?" Nieching Rong pursed her lips and smiled. "I was just about to discuss this matter with fellow Taoist. I want little Shi to become the Vice Palace Master Lung Qingshue's disciple. Qingxue has a noble and clean temperament, and what's rare is her attainments in the Great Tao. It can be said to be exquisite and strong. With her teaching, little Shi's talent and foundation will definitely not be buried." Lin Sun couldn't help but think of a beautiful woman in snow-white clothes with a golden hairband wrapped around her hair. "All right," he immediately agreed. Having an emperor ancestor teaching little Shi cultivation was undoubtedly a blessing. After all, little Shi was just a little girl in the immortal tribulation realm. "Sister." Suddenly, a cold voice rang out in the distance, carrying an anxious tone. Along with a fluctuation in the void, Lung Qingshue's graceful and ethereal white figure appeared out of thin air. "Qingxue, I've already told fellow Taoists that you will be little Shi's master from now on, and she will be your last disciple. You have to shoulder the responsibility of being her master," Nieching Rong said with a smile. Lung Qingxue grunted, and then she said swiftly, "Big sister, let's not talk about all this for now. I've just obtained news that the 3 Vice Palace Masters of Ice Arrival Academy will arrive at our Yin Academy very soon, and they said they're coming to pay their respects to the deceased Yu Qianheng. I suspect they've come with ill intent." It was difficult to hide the worry in her words. Ice Advent Academy. Nieching Rong's beautiful eyes narrowed. The situation in the Yin Academy had just stabilized, but the big shots of Ice Advent Academy had come together, and they even came under the banner of mourning Yu Qianheng. If the big shots in the Yin Academy who had always supported and been loyal to Yu Qianheng in the past knew about this, they would probably take the opportunity to stir up trouble. Are you sure that there are only 3 Vice Palace Masters coming from Ice Advent Academy? Nie Qing Rong asked. Long Qingxue hesitated before she said, I don't dare be sure about that. I'll deal with this matter. Lin Sun put away the fishing rod in his hand and stood up as he said, Just take it as the gift I prepared for little Shi to take you as her master. Taoist brother, Nie Qing Rong was deeply moved, and she felt rather embarrassed in her heart. She felt that she'd troubled Lin Sun too much, and she owed him more and more favors. Don't forget that it was I who killed Yuan Wanzhong and the others that day, and the reason I killed them was no different than helping you deal with Yiqianeng. After all, the Wen clan stood behind Ice Advent Academy. Lin Sun smiled as he spoke these words, and then his figure had already floated off and vanished in the blink of an eye. When Nie Qing Rong still wanted to say something, it was already too late. Sister, could it be that this Taoist brother has feelings for you? Otherwise, why would he help us so much? Lung Qingxue stared blankly as she asked. Nie Qing Rong's beautiful and charming face burned, and she spat lightly. Don't speak nonsense. With my beauty, it's utterly impossible for him to take a fancy to me. As she finished speaking, a trace of a faint sense of loss couldn't help but arise in her heart. If he really does have feelings for me, then it would be great. P.S. 3rd and 4th updates. There will be a 5th update at around 8:30 p.m. Everyone's enthusiasm to cast their monthly votes today isn't high. I'm urgently begging everyone. Chapter 2685. The sky was vast and filled with auspicious clouds. Jean Juin pointed to the distance and said, That's the Shenshu mountain range, the #1 blessed land in the Donglai region. The Yin and Yang Academy is located there. He was one of the Vice Palace Masters of the Ice Advent Academy. He had a strong body, and his hair was like a halberd. He was the leader of the operation this time. I still don't understand how Nie Qianrong could kill Yu Qianheng, who wielded a level 3 Earth rank sequence power with her combat power. When did this woman become so terrifying? Huang Zhen, another Vice Palace Master of the Ice Advent Academy, frowned and said. He wore a feather robe, and his eyebrows were like swords. He stood on a painting of the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and he looked unrestrained. The Zhu family has already obtained a new heaven-rank sequence power. It won't be long before they move to the 7th heaven. Under such circumstances, Nie Qianrong still dared to kill Yu Qianheng, who was backed by the Zhu family. Her courage is indeed too great. Beside Huang Zhen, a beautiful and charming woman in a black dress with her snow-white hair draped over her shoulders and a flower basket in her hand also spoke with a sigh. Her name was Shi Yunfei, and she was also one of the Vice Palace Masters of the Ice Advent Academy. According to the information I've obtained, the person who killed Yu Qianheng wasn't Nie Qingrong. Instead, it was a person of mysterious origin. Nie Qingrong merely took advantage of the situation. Otherwise, how could the position of Palace Master of the Yin Yang Academy possibly fall into her hands? Jean Juin, who was the leader, said indifferently. Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei revealed a look of understanding. This was reasonable. With the death of Yu Qianheng, Nian Yunjing, and Yong Faidu, only Nie Qianrong and Lung Qingxue had the qualifications to take over the position of Palace Master. Lung Qingxue had always ignored the affairs of the world and stood aloof from worldly affairs. It was only natural that Nie Qianrong could seize this opportunity to take over the position of Palace Master. Brother Jean, do you know who that mysterious person is? Huang Zhen asked. Jean Juin pondered deeply for a moment before he said, I'm not sure about that. Both of you are aware that there's a pawn placed within the Yin Yang Academy, but according to the information he spread, I don't know who this mysterious figure is. And Nie Qianheng and Yong Faida's deaths were all pushed to this mysterious person as soon as she took over. This is very strange. If this mysterious person was invited by Nie Qianheng, why would Nie Qianheng and Yong Faida dare to blame him? Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei couldn't help but frown. This was indeed strange. No matter what, our operation this time is to find out the truth about the Yin Yang Academy. Besides that, Even though Yu Qianheng is dead, he once spread the news that Nye Qianrong possessed a Tao diagram related to the energy of order. So long as we're able to eliminate Nye Qianheng, then this Tao diagram will belong to our Ice Advent Academy. Jin Juin's eyes were suffused with a cold light as he said, but both of you are aware that the operation of Vice Palace Master Yuan Wanzhong and the others failed not long ago, and it's very likely that they've already perished. This matter infuriated our palace master, and he feels that Yu Qianheng played tricks and intentionally seized this opportunity to harm our Ice Advent Academy. When this matter was mentioned, the space between Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei's brows were suffused with a cold expression. The deaths of Yuan Wanzhong and the others were extremely strange, and it caused them to have no choice but to suspect if all of this was a scheme of the Yin Yang Academy, using the Tao diagram as bait to carry out a slaughter. Supposedly, along with Yu Qianheng's death, the energy of order at the 3rd grade of the Earth rank of the Yin Yang Academy has been lost, and it isn't in Nye Qianrong's control. If the opportunity is right this time, then we'll capture Nye Qianrong. Killing intent flashed in Jin Jiuyin's eyes. At that time, the Yin Yang Academy would be like a group of dragons without a leader, and it would surely fall into chaos. Our Ice Advent Academy would be able to seize this opportunity to enter. Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei nodded in their hearts. They'd come here this time precisely for this reason. The only thing they weren't sure about was the mysterious figure that killed Yu Qianheng. We're almost there. Everyone, it's time to reveal the strength of our Ice Advent Academy. When he saw the boundless Shinta mountain range from afar, bright lights surged in Jin Jiuyin's eyes, and a strand of lofty sentiments arose abruptly in his heart. No matter what, along with the deaths of Yu Qianheng and the other great figures of the Yin Yang Academy, it was strong on the outside but weak on the inside, and it was greatly weakened. This gave them an opportunity to seize this opportunity to enter. Haha, let me see if Nye Qianrong has the ability to go against us. Huang Zhen grinned in a carefree and unrestrained manner. Shi Yunfei was just about to say something when her eyes suddenly squinted, and she looked towards the distance. Before the Shinta mountain range, a wave of smoke curled up from the bank of stream at the foot of the mountain, and there was a wave of the faint fragrance of roasted meat faintly wafting over. When one looked carefully, one saw a campfire surging at the bank of the stream, and an iron fork that held a fat fish was being roasted to the point it dripped with oil. The person roasting the fish was a man that sat on the ground while a variety of seasonings were placed by his side, and he frequently applied seasonings to the fish in a highly skilled and concentrated manner. The fragrance of roasted meat and smoke came from there. This wouldn't be a gluttonous disciple of the Yin Yang Academy, right? He actually came to the entrance of his own academy to roast fish. What a scandal! This obviously shows how rotten and corrupt the rules of the Yin Yang Academy are now. Jin Jiuyin couldn't help but laugh with ridicule as he noticed this scene as well. This is the sign of the Yin Yang Academy being ruined. Huang Zhen judged. If such an incident occurred in our Ice Descent Academy, then this disciple along with the instructor would be severely punished. A light punishment would be to ponder over their mistakes behind closed doors, and a heavy punishment would be expulsion from the academy. However, this kid's skill in roasting meat isn't bad, and it makes me drool. Shi Yunfei couldn't help but tease with a smile as she smelled the tempting fragrance that came from the air. Unfortunately, you don't have the fortune to enjoy such delicacies. Right at this moment, an indifferent voice resounded out. The figure at the bank of the stream removed the roasted fish, and with a flick of his finger, he tore off a piece of fish that was tender on the inside and charred on the outside, and then he stuffed it into his mouth and started chewing while a wisp of satisfaction appeared on his face. This person was naturally Lin's son. The roasted fish in his hand was born from a source of spirit energy, and it was extremely plump with pure and crystalline meat. After it was roasted with a variety of seasonings that he'd hidden in his collection, its taste was truly wonderful. There's something wrong with this person. The eyes of Shi Yunfei, Huang Zhen, and Jin Jiuyin narrowed when they heard Lin's son, and they realized that something was off. An ordinary disciple of the Yin Yang Academy wouldn't dare speak to them like this at all. All of you don't act rashly for now. Allow me to probe him. Jean Joine spoke via voice transmission, and then his gaze was like a torch that locked onto Lin Sun as he said, I'm Jean Joine of the Ice Descent Academy. May I know your name? You're about to die, so why ask all of this? There's no need to be anxious. I'll send all of you on your way once I finish eating this fish. Lin Sun chewed with large mouthfuls of wine, and he seemed relaxed and at ease. But his words seemed to be so ear-piercing, and it caused the expressions of Jean Joine and the others to sink while cold lights surged in their eyes. There really is something wrong with this kid. So in this way, you've been waiting for us here? Jean Joine's voice was deep and revealed an oppressive pressure, and an enormous consciousness swept towards Lin Sun like a gale. At the same time, Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei were prepared for battle. Sort of. Lin Sun finished all the fish in a short while, and only a snow-white fishbone remained. He casually tossed it away, and then he picked up the wine gourd and drank to his heart's content. When Jean Joine's consciousness swept over, it was crushed and dissolved by an invisible force before it could get close to Lin Sun. This caused Jean Joine to be shocked in his heart, and he felt that something was wrong. He immediately sent a voice transmission to Lin Sun. Let's kill this guy first. Boom. The void formation dimmed, and the sun and moon lost their light. Jean Joine seemed to be extremely decisive. A huge sword surging with lightning slashed out, and it set off boundless ancestor realm light as it slashed towards Lin Sun. Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei, who had been prepared for battle for a long time, made a move at the same time. Buzz. A diagram of the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers flashed out, and it ceaselessly spread and expanded in the void. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a vast world that blotted out the sky and the sun, and it enveloped down. Swish! Shi Yunfei threw out the flower basket in her hand, and colorful and magnificent divine rainbows poured out from the flower basket. There were a total of 9 colors, and every divine rainbow transformed into ancient divine beasts of different shapes, and they let out earth-shattering roars as they rushed towards Lin Sun. How terrifying was the power of 3 emperor ancestors when they made a move. The originally tranquil world suddenly fell into chaos. All kinds of great Tao rumbled. The sword intent was dense. The Tao diagram was surging, and the divine beasts were roaring, causing the mountains and rivers to tremble and the grass and trees to turn into ashes. The rules of heaven and earth in the first heaven were extremely solid, and only immortals could cause a disaster that could destroy the world. In contrast, these 3 emperor ancestors from Ice Advent Academy were able to cause such a terrifying scene of destruction as soon as they made a move. It could be seen that their foundation and cultivation were extraordinary. Boom! In just an instant, the area near the foot of the mountain suddenly collapsed and collapsed. The stream was completely evaporated, and everything was annihilated in the surging Tao light. But the strange thing was that Lin Sun's figure wasn't in the scene of destruction. This caused Jean Joine to be shocked in his heart, and he was just about to react when a tall figure appeared out of thin air, and the figure raised a finger and pressed towards the center of his eyebrows. Bang! A bloody hole appeared in the center of Jean Joine's eyebrows. His eyes were wide open, and his expression was filled with confusion and disbelief. Even he couldn't resist the power of the finger. In the next moment, he lost consciousness, and his body silently turned into ashes that scattered all over the sky. The power of Lin Sun's finger not only pierced through his spirit, but also obliterated all the vitality in his body. Oh no, run! This scene was clearly seen by Huang Zhen and Shi Yunfei, and they were so shocked that their scalps almost exploded. Their first reaction was to flee. But how could Lin Sun give them a chance? He waved his sleeve. Boom! A wisp of light condensed in midair and transformed into a boundless sword chi that seemed like a river of stars, and it enveloped Huang Zhen's figure within it. He resisted desperately while roaring repeatedly, and he utilized all his ability. He utilized all sorts of Tao arts and secret treasures, as if they were worthless, yet it was utterly futile. All of them were crushed and crushed beneath the boundless sword chi. Bang! In the blink of an eye, his whole body exploded and disappeared in the surging sword chi. At the moment of death, he let out a shrill and unwilling scream. "You're that mysterious man?" Chapter 2686. Mysterious Person. Shi Yunfei's heart shook fiercely. She finally understood. She even realized that this person was obviously waiting for them to help the Yin Yang Academy. Otherwise, why would he be so ruthless towards them when there was no enmity between them? This damned Nie Qingrong must have a close relationship with this mysterious person. Shi Yunfei wasn't stupid. She roughly guessed the truth and couldn't help but grit her teeth in hatred. "How far can you run?" An indifferent voice sounded in her ears. To Shi Yunfei, it was no less than a clap of thunder striking her heart. Her heart trembled. She suddenly waved her hand as if she was going all out. Whoosh! A Taoist sword covered in dense runes whizzed out. In an instant, a wave of silver order power whizzed out. Before this operation, Shi Yunfei had obtained this secret treasure from the Palace Master of Ice Advent Academy. It could control a wave of order power. Originally, they planned to use it to suppress Nie Qingrong after entering the Yin Yang Academy. But now, it was used by Shi Yunfei as a means to escape. Boom! The silver order power was like an arc of lightning, illuminating the mountains and rivers. Its aura was terrifying and terrifying. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grabbed. The shadow of the abyssal sword cauldron faintly appeared in his palm. Immediately after, the silver order power was like a python that was being grabbed. It was swallowed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It had become Wu Shuang's food. Shi Yunfei's soul almost left her body. She almost didn't dare to believe her eyes. At this moment, her mood was the same as Yu Qinheng's. She didn't dare to believe that the order power could be defeated so easily. "Who are you?" she screamed, her pretty face pale. What answered her was an oncoming sword chi. It was brilliant like a rainbow and spanned across the 9 heavens. It completely shocked her vision and mind. Pooh! In the next moment, her figure withered. She died. I'm already dead. Does it matter who I am? Lin Sun shook his head and turned to leave. Not long after his figure disappeared, a group of dazzling escape lights flew out from the Yin Yang Academy in the depths of the Shinam Mountains and flew over. They were led by Nie Qingrong, Lung Qingxue, and other important figures of the Yin Yang Academy. Obviously, the battle that occurred here had alarmed the Heaven and Earth Academy. But when they arrived, the battle had ended a long time ago, and only the ruins of the mountains and rivers and a scene of desolation remained. What's going on? Many people were bewildered. Didn't they say that the Heaven and Earth Academy's 3 Vice Palace Lords came? Could it be that they suffered a calamity here and have already passed away? Someone was bewildered and vaguely guessed something. He looked towards Nie Qingrong. Before the facts are clear, don't make wild guesses. Nie Qingrong glanced at that person. Her cold gaze caused the person's expression to change, and he lowered his head. Let's go back to the academy. In the next moment, Nie Qingrong made a decision and brought her people back. Although everyone was confused, they still followed him obediently. Only Lung Qingxue seemed to understand, and she couldn't help but send a voice transmission. Big sister, isn't that fellow Taoist too formidable? From the beginning to the end of this battle, it was only a short moment. Others might not know, but how could she not know that all this was Lin Sun's doing? If it wasn't for him, our Heaven and Earth Academy would have suffered a calamity today. Nie Qingrong's heart roiled as she sighed with emotion. She probably wouldn't be able to repay the favor she owed Lin Sun in this lifetime. A calamity was resolved just like this before the Shindam mountain range. While the cultivators of the Heaven and Earth Academy were still kept in the dark, Lin Sun had already silently returned to his residence. Besides Nie Qingrong and Lung Qingxue, no one knew that this mysterious person had always been in the Heaven and Earth Academy. Taoist brother, thank you. As soon as she returned to the Heaven and Earth Academy, Nie Qingrong went to Lin Sun's residence, and her beautiful and fair face revealed an expression of gratitude that was impossible to conceal. I told you, this is a gift for little she to take Lin Sun as her master. Lin Sun smiled indifferently, and then he said, besides that, help me prepare a map to the Southern Fire Region's Icefall Academy. Nie Qingrong couldn't help but be surprised. Daoist brother, what are you doing? Waiting for the enemy to come knocking is too passive in the end. What do you think? Lin Sun smiled. Nie Qingrong instantly understood, and her heart shook. One day later, Lin Sun quietly left the Heaven and Earth Academy. He wasn't in a hurry, and like a wanderer, he walked alone in the first heaven. During the day, he trekked through the vast mountains and rivers, and at night, he walked through the bustling cities. This was the first time he sensed the eternal true world in such detail and vividly. Even though it was just the first region of heaven, to Lin Sun, it was still an eye-opener. A month passed in a hurry. At this time, Lin Sun finally arrived at a city called Fish Stream, which was the closest to the Icefall Academy. It wasn't that he deliberately slowed down, but the journey from the Donglai region to the Southern Fire region was too far. I'll rest here tonight. Lin Sun found an inn and used it as a place to stay. Although it was called an inn, it was actually built from independent caves and mansions. It was extremely luxurious and could meet the needs of Emperor Realm cultivators. Of course, the price was so high that it wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could afford. In less than 3 months, my strength will be restored to its peak state. Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation, calmly sensing his own qi. He had already noticed that although his strength had been restored, his cultivation was still at the early stage of Emperor Ancestor Realm. But compared with the past, it was completely different, because the reconstruction of the Tao this time was like being reborn in nirvana, breaking and building. Moreover, with the Great Way Furnace scripture as the foundation, the Tao and potential tempered by it were much stronger than before. And the most obvious change was his talent power. Recently, there would often be a strange and obscure fluctuation in his heart vein, causing his chest to faintly feel a scorching heat. This made Lin Sun wonder if this was a sign of awakening the third stage of his talent power. If that's the case, then I'm really looking forward to it. Back in the Tai ruins of the vast Kiliacosm domain, he had seen the power of the Blade of Time that the Skirich Lord had used. He had beaten Wei Mingzi back to when he was a teenager, and his cultivation had been reduced. It could be said to be heaven-defying and abnormal. Moreover, the Blade of Time was now sealed in his heart meridian. At that time, Lin Sun had inferred that when he awakened the third stage of his talent, he could easily control the Blade of Time. Similarly, he could also awaken his own talent power, because every person with the talent of Devouring Abyss would get different talent power when awakening the talent power. For example, the Star Obscuring Emperor awakened the Star Obscuring skill. For example, the first stage of Lin's talent awakened was the Star Obscuring skill and the Devouring skill. But in the final analysis, the power and talent of Devouring Abyss were all related to the Law of Time. If I can awaken the third stage of my talent power, I may be able to fight against immortals. Lin Sun's black eyes were bright, and he was looking forward to it. The next morning, before dawn, Lin Sun had quietly left the inn. At the same time, in the depths of the misty river mountain, where the Ice Forest Academy was located. According to the time, Jin Join and others should be back by now. In a magnificent palace, Rui Taifu, the master of Ice Advent Academy, paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. If I can bring back the diagram related to the power of order this time, I don't need to look for it at all. When the inspector of the one family arrives, I can present the diagram to them. It will be a great contribution. And then, thinking of this, Rui Taifu was excited, and his eyes were full of longing. Why should I worry about not being able to enter the sixth heaven for cultivation? Come in, Rui Taifu suddenly said. A figure of servant appeared outside the hall and said respectfully, "What can I do for you, Your Excellency? Is there any news from Jin Join and others?" Rui Taifu asked. These days, he asked almost every once in a while. The servant shook his head and said in a low voice, "Your Excellency, don't worry too much. Jean Joine and others will definitely succeed in this trip and return triumphantly. Return triumphantly? I hope that as long as they can bring back that Tao diagram, I will be satisfied. Rue Taifu let out a long sigh. It's a pity that they can't come back, and you are destined not to be satisfied. Suddenly, a voice that was calm like water resounded from outside the hall. Rue Taifu's pupils constricted, and he suddenly saw a tall figure appear out of thin air outside the hall. The figure looked extremely strange. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you sneak into my Ice Advent Academy without permission? The Tao attendant exploded with rage and berated. The person who came was Lin Sun. He said casually, "This place is not a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. I can come and go as I please. Why sneak in?" You. As soon as the servant opened his mouth, he felt a pain in his divine soul, and then he lost consciousness. His body fell to the ground softly. Lin Sun looked at Rue Taifu and said, "Are you the master of Ice Advent Academy?" Rue Taifu had calmed down at this moment. His eyes flickered, and he said, "Who are you?" Lin Sun smiled slightly. "I'm asking you. You just need to answer. If you don't cooperate, don't blame me for being rude." Rue Taifu's face became extremely gloomy. This was his territory. For so many years, who dared to threaten him like this? Immediately, he seemed to guess something and suddenly said, "Are you the mysterious man who killed Yu Qianheng?" Lin Sun sighed softly. "It seems that you didn't listen to what I said." His voice was still echoing, but his figure had disappeared out of thin air. Rue Taifu felt a chill in his heart. Flames were rising all over his body, and he shouted, "Rise!" Within the hall, an expanse of silver energy of order suddenly surged into appearance, and it condensed into a dense expanse of divine chains of order in space that formed layer upon layer of defenses around Rue Taifu. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared. Faster than him, a bright palm print, like a swift and overbearing streamer, shot out fiercely. Boom! In just a moment, the power of order, which Rue Taifu regarded as invulnerable and unshakable, collapsed and exploded layer by layer in the rumbling sound of explosion. P.S. The 6th update is here. The outbreak is over. Asking for monthly votes. Chapter 2687. Boom! Before the crumbling power of order splashed out, it was swallowed up by the dazzling palm print and poured into the abyssal sword cauldron. In the world of Nirvana, Wu Shuang, who was dressed in white like a pure girl, cheered. The devoured power of order was like tempting food to her. Moreover, Xiao Xian and Little Ming couldn't compete with her, which made her feel extremely happy. At this time, Rue Taifu, the headmaster of Ice Advent Academy, was frightened and confused. Like the 3rd-level Earth rank of Yin Yang Academy, the power of order that Lin Sun had devoured was also Rue Taifu's biggest reliance. But now it was vulnerable. No, before Rue Taifu could dodge, Lin Sun grabbed his throat and imprisoned him. Rue Taifu trembled uncontrollably. He was completely frightened. Since he started cultivating until now, he could be considered to be a ferocious person that had seen great storms and great dangers. Yet when had he ever seen such an inconceivable thing? Now, can you cooperate with me? Lin Sun asked indifferently, his dark eyes deep. As he spoke, he threw Rue Taifu to the ground. Rue Taifu twitched with fear, horror, and confusion on his face. Ice Advent Academy has no grudge against you. Why do you do this? What do you want to do? He asked in a trembling voice. I have a grudge against the Wen family. As soon as Lin Sun said this, Rue Taifu was like being struck by lightning. He suddenly understood that he was implicated by the Wen family. But I'm not a member of the Wen family. Rue Taifu tried to dissociate himself from the Wen family. Lin Sun interrupted him. If a dog is disloyal and unjust, what do you think will happen if its owner knows? Rue Taifu's face suddenly turned pale. What's more, as far as I know, since you stepped into the Emperor realm, you have been attaching yourself to the Wen family. Now you have served the Wen family for nearly 2,000 years. How dare you say that you have nothing to do with the Wen family? Lin Sun's voice was full of sarcasm. Rui Taifu was paralyzed, as if he had collapsed. His eyes were blank. Of course, Wen family is Wen family, and you are you. Although I have killed countless people, I don't kill innocent people, Lin Sun said. Rui Taifu was like a hopeless prisoner who had seen a trace of hope, and he said agitatedly, "As long as you can spare my life, I'll definitely turn over a new leaf and repent for my wrongdoings. I'll never do evil again," Lin Sun said. "If you had been so cooperative just now, how could so many things have happened?" Rui Taifu had a bitter taste in his mouth. If he had known that even the power of order could not withstand a single blow, would he have dared to not cooperate? "Refine this talisman into your natal emperor realm, and I will give you a chance to live." As Lin Sun spoke, wisps of Taoist light emerged from his palms and fingers, condensing into a strange black talisman, which was inserted into the space between Rui Taifu's eyebrows. Dao Taboo, Divine Talisman. It was a secret technique recorded in the origin of Taoism of the last era. It was condensed from willpower, and when it was inserted into the enemy's body, it was like planting a seed of disaster. As long as the caster willed it, the power of the Dao Taboo Divine Talisman would instantly destroy the enemy's cultivation. It was really strange and ruthless. Rui Taifu acted very happily. He released his natal emperor realm without the slightest resistance or obstruction. The Dao Taboo Divine Talisman instantly turned into wisps of black light and integrated into his cultivation. "I won't make things difficult for you for the rest of your life. As long as you obediently obey the orders of the headmaster of Yinyang Academy, Nie Qingrong, and obtain her understanding and approval, she will naturally remove the disaster in your body. I might as well tell you that even an immortal can't help you remove this disaster. You'd better not take chances," Lin Sun said. Rui Taifu took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, senior." Even the way he addressed Lin Sun changed. Lin Sun didn't care whether Rui Taifu was sincere or not. With the Dao Taboo Divine Talisman, he wasn't afraid that Rui Taifu would go back on his words. "From today onward, you're still the headmaster of Ice Advent Academy. Understand?" said Lin Sun. Rui Taifu pondered briefly before he said solemnly, "I'll definitely remember senior's teachings." On that very day, Lin Sun left Ice Advent Academy and embarked on his return journey. It was also on this day that the people of the world were completely unaware that the current headmaster of Ice Advent Academy, Rui Taifu, had already become a pawn in the hands of the headmaster of Yinyang Academy. 1 month later, Lin Sun appeared at his residence in Yinyang Academy. His trip this time had lasted for 2 months, yet the outcome was to Lin Sun's satisfaction. At the very least, after he left, Ice Advent Academy would imperceptibly become a great assistance to Yinyang Academy. On that very day, Lin Sun passed the secret technique to control the Dao Taboo Divine Talisman to Nie Qingrong, and it caused the latter to be shocked repeatedly. No matter how she racked her brains, she would never have imagined that Lin Sun would actually directly subdue the headmaster of Ice Advent Academy during his trip this time and firmly take control of him. Lin Sun didn't give any explanation towards this. Nie Qingrong also tactfully didn't ask any further. Before she left, she did tell Lin Sun one thing. In another half a month or so, the Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors from the Zhu, He, and Hong immortal emperor clans of the Sixth Heaven would arrive together. This made Nie Qingrong extremely nervous. She was afraid that after the Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors of the Zhu family arrived, they would vent their anger on her because of Yu Qianheng's death. At that time, even the He family's Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors wouldn't be able to do anything. After all, the Zhu family couldn't be compared to the past. It wouldn't be long before they took root in the Seventh Heaven. The He family probably wouldn't be willing to offend the Zhu family at this critical juncture. After understanding this, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile and comfort her. "Don't worry, just push all the blame onto me. I like to see what kind of Inspector Heavenly Ambassador the Zhu family will send." Time flew by quickly. Unknowingly, more than 10 days had passed. On the vast and tranquil blue lake, along with a long and drawn-out breathing sound. Lin Sun woke up from his meditation. Just a little bit more, and I'll be able to completely recover. After sensing his body's condition, Lin Sun felt relaxed. A few years ago, he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Today, he was finally able to rebuild his cultivation. Naturally, he was extremely happy. Moreover, in the recent period of time, the changes in his heart meridian became more frequent. It was like a seed was stirring, yearning to break out of the ground. This made Lin Sun realize that he was getting closer and closer to the third stage of his talent power. This was also a piece of good news that he was looking forward to. Suddenly, Lin Sun seemed to have sensed something and looked far into the sky. At the same time, outside the Shun-Tu mountain range, the void fluctuated and 3 figures appeared. The leader was a thin, middle-aged man. He was tall and dressed in black. His entire body was bathed in a divine halo made of immortal Tao light. He was like a ruler that had descended to the world, causing the heaven and earth to wail. Beside him was a man and a woman. Their aura was also extraordinary, but they were completely overshadowed by the black-clothed immortal emperor. An immortal emperor actually came. At the side of the lake, Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, and he quietly retracted his divine sense. He didn't even need to guess and know that these 3 were the Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors from the Zhu, He, and Hong Immortal Emperor clans. At this time, the Yin-Yang Academy was in an uproar. 3 Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors had arrived, and Palace Master Nie Qingrong led a group of important figures to personally welcome them. This attracted the attention of countless descendants. Fellow Taoist. In less than an hour, Lung Qingxue hurried over and appeared in front of Lin Sun. Her picturesque and beautiful face was filled with worry. Without waiting for Lin Sun to ask, she told him everything that had happened. This time, the 3 Inspector Heavenly Ambassadors were Zhu Han, He Yufang, and Hong Yinghe from the 3 Immortal Emperor clans. Among them, Zhu Han was the thin and tall black-clothed middle-aged man. He was an immortal emperor with a heavenly longevity realm cultivation. Previously at the Yin-Yang Great Hall, something happened the moment Zhu Han arrived. Some of the important figures of the Yin-Yang Academy jumped out and denounced Nie Qingrong's wild ambition. In order to usurp the position of Palace Master, she didn't hesitate to use crafty schemes to kill Yu Qianheng and Yong Faidu. They hoped that Zhu Han would personally take down Nie Qingrong and bring justice to Yu Qianheng. Nie Qingrong naturally wouldn't just sit and wait for death. She immediately explained and pushed all the blame onto the mysterious person Lin Sun was playing. Moreover, He Yufang and Hong Yinghe from the He family and Hong family also spoke up for Nie Qingrong. Only then did they resolve the crisis without any mishaps. But no one expected that in the following time, Zhu Han didn't care about Yu Qianheng's life or death, nor did he care who the mysterious person was. Instead, he asked about the Tao diagram related to the power of order. Moreover, he directly ordered that if he didn't see the Tao diagram within 2 hours, he would punish Nie Qingrong. Lung Qingxue had come for this. After understanding this, Lin Sun immediately made a judgment. Zhu Han's true purpose was probably for the Tao diagram related to the eternally falling forbidden area. As for the lives of Yu Qianheng and Yong Faidu, they weren't important to an immortal like him at all. No wonder he sent an immortal. So it's for the power of order, Lin Sun understood. If it was just for some tributes, an immortal like Zhu Han would probably not come to the first heaven personally. Tao brother, what should we do? Lung Qingxue couldn't help but ask worriedly. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, since he came for the Tao diagram, as long as you hand it over, he won't make things difficult for fellow Nie. Take the Tao diagram to fellow Nie now and let her hand it over to Zhu Han. Lung Qingxue was shocked. Tao brother, if we hand over the Tao diagram, what will you do? Lin Sun pointed at his head. I've already memorized all the clues on the Tao diagram. That's not what I mean. If we let Zhu Han find the power of order, wouldn't we be letting him off easy? The loss would be too great. Lung Qingxue said anxiously. Lin Sun smiled and said casually, so, when Zhu Han sets off to search for the power of order, I will go with him. At that time, let's see who can seize the power of order in their hands, and who can walk out of the eternally falling forbidden area alive. At the end of his words, a cold light flashed in his eyes. P.S. Late at night, my thoughts are in a mess, and my condition is a little off.